Okay, so welcome to Financial Spreadsheeting, FNC 90045 in Semester 2. So I'm Ian O'Connor and I'm your lecturer, tutor, everything, examiner, mentor, shoulder to cry on if you need me during the semester. So welcome to the class, and I've taught this subject for, it seems, a long time now. But anyhow, I'm back again this semester, and welcome to the evening class. Now this semester, or this year, things have changed a bit in the subject. The actual subject hasn't changed, but the student cohort has, I think. Because in the past, like last year, you didn't need to pass the exam to pass the subject, and I guess more than should have passed the subject who weren't the sort of people I wouldn't really want to work with because, anyhow. This year, of course, they've changed the requirement that you must. There's this hurdle in many subjects now in the university, both undergraduate and postgraduate. And last semester, these rooms hold 80 people. And I started off semester 1 with 4 classes per week, heaps of students. And then after week number 1, when they shopped around, a whole mob left. 50 people sort of departed. Never happened before. Used to always be creeping up. Anyhow. This semester, we've sort of started at a lower level. So this is, I guess the true believers and those who deserve to do well in the subject. So welcome to you people. I look forward to your capabilities during semester. So I'll start with the boring stuff first of all. And in the class tonight, virtually we're doing financial spreadsheeting, financial modelling, and it's of course Microsoft Excel based. And we do a lot of work on that during the semester. So I'll just cover, first of all, aspects of the syllabus, which I'll get on to now, the subject outline. And while that's loading, of course, in this subject, because we're doing Microsoft Excel, it is in fact Windows-based. And the handbook provides that students in this subject are meant to provide their own device, which has, for example, Microsoft Excel in a Windows environment. And in the past, I guess you get lots of emails from people saying, "Oh, is it okay if I use my Mac? Can you use your Mac computer?" Of course you can. They're wonderful machines. However, I recommend you install Windows on your Mac and survive that way. And so basically, with Microsoft Excel now in the current version, in Excel 2016, the Mac version would work okay in the first 6 weeks of the subject, but the Visual Basic Editor in the Mac version currently has been killed off. It doesn't in fact do anything. And Microsoft recommend, if you're going to use Excel in Mac, to write your code in Windows and port it across to the Mac system. Okay. So basically what I recommend there is if you're going, in this subject, from classes 7 onwards, we do a VBA type environment. You can either use one of these desktop PCs, they're always available to you, so that's first in best dress there. Or you can just sit back and listen to the recording later on and do it at home on your Mac, for example, and find a Windows machine. But both the assignment, or mostly the assignment is the most important part, you must in fact write the code in a Windows machine. On the exam, well, if you've done it if you've done your assignment on a Windows, you're fine in the exam, because the exam, of course, pen and paper, which is okay. Now, in the class this morning, several students were terrified or didn't like Windows, so the university provides free to you people, both Windows and Office for Windows as well. It's provided free, okay? So who at this point is deciding to stick with Mac OS? Don't be ashamed, but I just want to be clear about any brave people who want to stick with Mac. Okay. Now, I've taught this class for ages, and every semester I waffle on about Mac, and I thought, what do these Macs in fact do? So last semester I bought my wife an iMac just as a present. Good excuse to waste several $1,000s. Anyhow, I confirmed that, of course, they're good machines, but you can't, in fact, do much advanced modelling in a Mac environment. Anyhow, that's the story there. So I'll get on back to the subject guide for a short time. So I'm Ian O'Connor, and you'll see there that I've got a DR in front of my name. I in fact did a PhD here part-time around about 20 years ago. Okay, I did my PhD in option price volatility, and all of the modelling was done in Excel. The whole thing virtually, apart from some regression stuff in some other package, but I did the whole thing virtually in Excel, and I did a master's at RMIT. Before that, in Lotus 123, also spreadsheet type environment. And I've been a CPA for a long time. I still pay my fees. I'm sure there are some masters of something accounting in this subject tonight, so welcome to you people. How many CPAs are amongst us tonight? Anyone who is one or aspiring to be a CPA? Good profession. It's been in the news in the last year or so about all sorts of shenanigans, but anyhow, it's another story. I'm paying people lots of money with my fees, it seems. Anyhow, so I'm a CPA, and virtually I used to work in a bank for a fair while. The bank went out of business in 1990. I went to Victoria College as an academic back then for a year. It became Deakin. After a year, I went to Monash Caulfield for 2 years, and actually been at Melbourne for 20 years or so. I can retire at any time I like, and I'm only here because I like spreadsheeting. That's my main thing that keeps me sane, I guess. So I hope I can impart some knowledge to you about using spreadsheeting and modelling in both a corporate environment and in your own small business environment too. I won't read through all this stuff, I tend to waffle on too much, but basically we're doing financial spreadsheeting or financial modelling, or other ways it can be called here, but basically this modelling, well, I've been around a long time. When I first did financial spreadsheeting, it was done on a piece of paper, a big sheet of A3 paper and a pen and paper and whatever else. And around about the mid-1980s, PCs came into existence, and I thought, spreadsheets on a PC, it was the most fantastic thing I'd ever seen in my life, okay? Just absolutely couldn't believe it. Oh. And I've been hooked ever since on spreadsheets since then. So it all began with a thing called VisiCalc, and I sort of cut my teeth in a thing called Lotus 123, which was really the downtown thing to use in around about the mid to late 80s. And Microsoft became quite prominent, and we see in the last 15 or so years that, of course, Microsoft Excel was in fact taken over, and Lotus 123 went out of business around about May 2014. They, in fact, ceased to sell the thing anymore. But it all began with VisiCalc, Lotus, and now Microsoft Excel. And I guess the more things change, the more they stay the same. So it still does the same important stuff, but lots of other junk has been added on. Meant to, be good for sales, I suppose, but that's what's going on. So basically, in this subject, we're going to be using, for example, Microsoft Excel, and whether you have 32-bit or 64-bit doesn't really matter. This slide here says that students should use the 32-bit version as recommended by Microsoft. That's what they say. That causes concerns to some people, but I don't really care which one you use. They're both adequate in this subject. Okay, quickly moving through. So basically, it's taught in two parts. The first 6 weeks are what I call pure Excel. It's all just in a spreadsheet, no modelling. And the second 6 weeks is what I call Excel automation. It's really to do with the VBA program in trying to model what's going on. And overall, the subject's about data collection, shaping, transformation, analysis, presentation, and reporting of information based on financial data. That's really the concept as far as we're going to be concerned in the subject. Okay. Now, I didn't talk about it in this morning's class, but people say VBA, who wants to learn that stuff? It's too easy. Okay. Who agrees with that statement? But of course, VBA is in every version of Excel, and it is in fact quite popular. There are other things. There are other ways it could be taught, but which one do you use? Hard to decide, so we're going to stick with VBA, and I think it's very useful, and many people, of course, do agree with that. I didn't mention the class this morning, but I've got two children. They were both graduates of this university, and so was my wife as well. So the whole family's done a Melbourne degree of some sort over the last umpteen years. Okay. My son did engineering here, eventually passed the degree when he got out of bed. And he's ended up in West Africa currently, working over there. So he's still alive, but he's doing engineering here and he's doing sand mining and things for an Iluka subsidiary in Sierra Leone, would you believe? And my daughter did commerce science here, modern languages Chinese, and she's now involved in a commercial bank in Australia doing project finance. She's in fact the director of project and export finance in Australia. So she's at least in a safer place, but that's the background there. And of course we sometimes talk to her about what she does in her environment in financial modelling in project finance type areas. Okay, there's my contact details there. I'm located in this building on level 12. I share the floor with the Dean and other important people. And because the Dean and important people are security conscious, there's a big door to our corridor which is locked the whole time. So I don't put my room number there because you can't get in. So please, during consultation, I'm there to help you. Get on the phone and dial 46812 from level 12, not level 11, like it's a common mistake. I go out there and say, where are you? They're downstairs, you know, and I get in and find them. They come up to find me. Big circle going on there. So that's what's going on with consultation. So I've got consultation before each class, this morning, this afternoon, and tomorrow afternoon from 12 to 12:45 in this building. I won't read through the whole thing. Once again, you found the class tonight. It's the same class each time. I try and be very consistent here. All the classes are recorded, even the one on Wednesday morning, which didn't run, was also recorded too. So there's 3 classes a week, 4 a week, recorded at this stage. We've got 10 tables here. It's a pretty useless room. Half of you are behind me. So, of course, there's 8 seats per table, 80 students, and we've got PowerPoints for charging there and also access. And once you're going to use these machines here, I think they're in fact Excel 2013, the same as this machine at the front here as well. Now, as far as classes are concerned, pretty much it's sort of a demonstration of features and you can sort of follow that through. I try and encourage sort of feedback and questions. It gets a bit boring me just waffling on the whole time, so please try and ask some questions. I'm here to help, okay? So that's the main point there. And getting on to here, so there's a lot of stuff to read through on this subject. Well, you mightn't read the whole thing, but at least have a glance through what we're going to cover each night. Just get you a bit prepared as to what's going on, I think. So once again, every night, it's really just a demonstration of features, and I try and involve participation. And of course, every semester in this university, people fill out their student experience survey online. Fantastic, I can read what you think of me. But there's nothing about sort of lecturers' feedback to students about what I think of you, okay? Look, you're fantastic people, but in my experience, a lot of people won't talk to me anyhow, so I try and encourage sort of at least some questions during the class. Very good. Shouldn't use your mobile phone. Ooh. Now on these regulations over here, somewhere on these things that you can't do, it actually says that, okay? Refrain from. Anyhow, I won't get too fussed, but I sometimes say, in this class, if you want to ask me a question, some classes you raise your hand for a question. In this class, if you're on your mobile phone, I'm assuming you've got a question to ask, okay? And I say, what is the question? Huh? Anyhow. When I was away sick 2 years ago, the replacement lecturer, Greg Schwann, who you might know, he took over this class for a little while, and he eventually says, out, for people on their mobile phones. Pretty brave, I thought. Anyhow, I won't mention mobile phones again. Rightio, so at the end of each class, I was posting lectures on the class after the class, but of course it's recorded now, so you can listen to that stuff if you want to instead. Okay. So basically, every week I go through sort of 4 major points each week. So there's some preliminary stuff here, but every week there are 4 major points, and that's done consistently each week. And I guess those points there should be sort of a starting point for revision for exams. So basically, when we get at the end of the class tonight, in class number 1 here, 1, 2 and 4, when we talk about, for example, cells and ranges, what sort of points come to mind there in relation to that topic? Now, that's explained in a lot more detail on a different website, but that's really the starting point for what's going on, okay? And some of this stuff may change during semester, down the bottom here. So once again, there's stuff on my website about what's going on, but I might in fact change some of the processes here as we go through. Now, in the world of financial spreadsheeting, there are 2 very important people, okay? And you might have heard of John Wolkenbach. And John Wolkenbach is based in good old US of A, I think somewhere in Arizona. And he calls himself Mr. Spreadsheets. So financial spreadsheeting, Mr. Spreadsheets must be important. So John Wolkenbach is Mr. Spreadsheets. And another bloke called Bill Jelen is in fact Mr. Excel. Okay. Now I could have, of course, called myself Dr. Excel or Dr. Spreadsheets, been very pretentious there, but I'm quite a mild sort of person. So I chose a little while back to call myself Excel at Finance. And this website here is purely designed for students basically in this subject. So although it's on a commercial server somewhere in the US of A, it's actually just designed for you people. And basically you'll see here both the password and the username for material in this subject. Those passwords stay around as long as I'm around, so it's been going for about 4 or 5 years now, so people back then can still log into the subject and see what's going on as the years roll by, sort of thing. So I hope you should find that useful. So once again, the subject name there, and of course this code word here is so Excel at Finance, the logo is XL, XLF. We're in room 5013 tonight. I was in 6015 this morning and tomorrow, and the class is currently actually on Thursday and Friday. That's the logic for the password there. And of course the subject schedule might change a little bit during semester. Next bit is about the assessment. There are 2 assignments. They are both group. The first group assignment, I actually assign members. There are four people per group, and I can't assign members until at least week 3 because the census date, I think, doesn't occur until the end of the 2nd week, so people might change position there. So I'll assign members in around week number 3, and that first assignment, in fact, covers material up until the end of week number 6, worth 25% in total. Second assignment, you can form your own group of between 3 and 5 students. It virtually covers weeks number 7 through 12. It's also worth 25%. Okay. The important part is that the end of semester examination, it's closed book, held at typically the REB building, and it's worth 50%. And of course, you must pass the exam to pass the subject. Okay. Now, last semester, that was the first experience I'd had with that requirement there. And I think with the exodus of 50 people in the first week, the stayers were worthy of doing quite well. And basically in the subject, in the exam, several people didn't show up and didn't apply for consideration. Didn't happen to them. And around about 6 or 8 people didn't pass the hurdle, but some had a second go, special consideration and final subject rule. Okay. Of course, the final subject rule means that if this is your last semester and you don't pass one component of your degree, you're entitled to another examination, typically, to do it again. Okay, very good. So the actual examination, it's not that hard. And you'll find on my website there's already some practice questions there. And in fact, one of the exam questions was the same as the practice question, and most people did quite well on that one. And of course, the ones who didn't do well, when I spoke to them, hadn't even found the practice question. Had they been to the class, been to some, anyhow, so that's the story there. Okay, that's about the assessment. Any questions about the assessment at this point? So the final point there would be, on this self-form group, you can form a group across any degree or any class. Okay, so if you're in the subject, you can form a group like that. But because when you form a group in second assignment, make sure that the group members don't all hate VBA programming. Okay? I am not a group member. I'm there to help, but I won't do it for you. And, you know, where do we start? Where do we start? Well, it doesn't happen very often, but some groups, they're a bit sort of lost as to what's going on. I don't know, anyhow. Not much last semester. Oh, okay. All this other stuff is fairly straightforward in all subjects, so I assume you actually read that stuff and are aware of what's going on. If you want explanation there, please see me during the break. You must submit your assignment online through the LMS system. Okay. Extensions on the assignment, I can't grant them. You must apply to someone greater than me and they will say yes or no and tell me, Ian, they've got an extension. That's okay, very good. Examinations, there's only one calculator allowed this year. In semester 1, didn't require a calculator, and you probably won't require one either in semester 2, so don't be too fussed about that point either. Now, as far as this course is concerned, there is a recommended textbook. This once again is by Mr. Spreadsheets, John Wolkenbach. It's called the Excel Bible 2016. It's around about 900 pages of stuff. Okay. I didn't even ask the bookshop to order one this semester. I got the feeling that most people don't buy it. Okay. I do. Last semester I actually bought the Google Play one online. That's fine. Has no page numbers though. A bit hard to refer to it, but I bought that version. So what I recommend here is in this subject, most people do quite well, but if you get to around about week number 2, at the end of week number 2, and have no idea what I'm talking about, and you decide to stay in the subject, I'd recommend getting the textbook, okay? And also speaking to me during consultation about any guidance you may require in the subject. Other textbooks are, of course, one by Mr. Excel, Bill Jelen. That's okay as well. And there's one here called Power Programming. That's around about 1,000 pages of programming, which you might use in weeks 7 to 12. But I'd suggest that even if you buy that 1,000-page book, you won't find the assignment answers in the textbook. Okay. A bit of common sense is required there. Okay. Moving along on this stuff. Now, these books here are all just Excel-based. In the financial side, the important ones here are one by Simon Beninga. So it's financial modelling based on Excel. That's a really sort of useful one. It's quite expensive. It's a hardcover thing published by MIT. Simon Beninga used to teach here sometimes. He actually taught another version of this subject a little while back. It used to be a 6-week version of spreadsheeting. But unfortunately, actually, Simon actually passed away in 2015, so it's very sad to lose his contribution in this area. But anyhow, his textbook is still quite useful. Okay, so once again, you should have your own device of some sort and typically have a Windows access to something. Typically, Excel 2016 is best. 2013 is the one I use on this machine here, probably. And my office upstairs still, in fact, has Excel 2010. They won't provide me one in my office, would you believe? I can install it at home, the university licence, but I can't install it in my office because it's IT controlled. And the final point there is, in this class we do a lot of work on data modelling, and to make things easier I'd recommend getting a mouse, whether it's cordless or corded. Anyhow, it's up to you. But it is a little bit faster doing that. End of the outline. Any questions? Okay, so this subject is quite practically based, and talking about my daughter who works in a commercial bank. So my daughter used to be, well, she still is. She still swims quite a bit, but she used to be a very competitive swimmer. She actually competed in the Sydney 2000 Olympic trials for the Australian team in swimming, for example. Okay, and because of that, my wife became involved in swimming, and my wife these days is actually very involved in swimming in the sense of being an organiser. She loves it. She loves it more than me, I think. She's always doing swimming stuff. Oh, heavens. Anyhow, talk about golfing widows. I'm a swimming widower. Anyhow, I can't swim. And over the last 20 years or so, I've been watching swimming on TV over and over and over again. This week, the World Championship somewhere in Hungary or somewhere. Swimming. Oh, I still can't swim. So in this class, I would recommend to be successful, get your hands on the keyboard and do things. Try out the exercises and really sort of have a love of actually learning modelling because you like the area and you believe that it's going to be useful with the job interview and useful in many areas of analysis and business in the big wide world, and I think it's very, very useful. Okay, so on that same topic, on my website there's several questions from past exams, and some of those questions are in fact sort of they're multiple choice. In multiple choice questions, there's a situation, and there's only about 4 or 5 different answers. Pick the correct one. And these questions include the questions, and also there's a sheet with the answer, just the A, B, C or D answer. It doesn't explain how the answer was arrived at. And every semester before the exam, some people say, Ian, why is this one wrong? Or why is that one the correct answer? And I'll say, oh, why don't you get the question, open up Excel, type it in, and see what happens? And the answer becomes obvious as to what's going on in that environment, okay? Yes, I can provide answers for these things, but people seem to look at the question, look at the answer, say, I can do that, but like, swimming, I haven't actually tried it out on a PC. So last semester, with one question, the same as the practice question, even the good students, yes, they'd seen the question on the trial exam, they must have looked at the answer provided and not actually tried it, because when it came to doing it in an exam venue, even some of the good students couldn't get a perfect score because they hadn't actually done it. It was saying about 6 lines answer. It was actually fairly straightforward, but it was concerning to see that outcome. Okay, I won't talk anything more about that. So this website called excelatfinance.com is, once again, it's really designed for the subject. There is some stuff here for the Maths Refresher workshops, which some of you might have gone to recently. I think Andre covered them last week. Okay, there's some stuff there. I used to teach a subject called Treasury Management here, and of course some of you currently might be doing that subject this year sometime. Not quite sure when it runs, but there's some stuff there available. Of course, this one here is in fact the link to your gateway to 90045. Okay. And before I go much further, on the screen here, there's a thing called Model Off. Now it tells you there the Model Off is in fact the World Championships in financial modelling. Okay. So if you're in this subject, and if you believe you are a true H1 student, then you might consider entering the Model Off World Championships. You will learn even more. Okay, very good. Now last semester it wasn't on because it's only on once a year. Last year, no one really was that keen about competing. But the year before, I think around about 10 or 12 people competed in the Model Off Championships. Okay. Now back in 2015 and earlier, Simon Beninga, the person who passed away, used to be one of the judges here, and this has actually now been commercialised by this company, but anyhow, we ignore that fact. So basically on Model Off, the competition starts on September 23 in Australia. You pay your $30 as a student. You can go online and enter round one on an online system. They will rank you then on an Australian basis. The top Australian person goes to New York to compete in the World Championships a bit later. And around about 3 or 4 years ago, a person didn't do this subject, but she's actually a graduate here. She worked for, I think, Flagstaff Partners downtown. She got as far as the World Championship finals overseas, which was good for her, so well done. Okay. Very good. Now this link here contains a list of references. And on this page here, for example, that Welcome Back programming text on the handout you've got mentions 2013, but this is in fact the current version of the Power Programming textbook. Should you buy that textbook? Probably not, but if you get hold of one, that's sort of useful to be an expert in VBA. The Meninga one is useful there. Now you might say, why don't we cover the Meninga textbook in this subject? Well, over the years I've found that many students in this subject don't have enough Excel skills in the first place to be true experts in modelling. So that's why we do at least 6 weeks of just Excel and then get on to the more serious stuff. And then at the bottom here is one more there relating to the Welcome Back textbook, which is the one I recommend in the subject. Everything else here is what I've found so far in relation to textbooks and Excel, spreadsheets and modelling in this area. Okay, very good. So once you've gone here to this page on the modelling side, we've got this page here has weeks 1 to 3, 4 to 6, so they're the first Excel part. There's this thing here about the assignment. It hasn't been updated yet. And there's the VBA parts after the second half of the subject. There's a second assignment here, hasn't been updated yet, and some exam questions here on the screen. And last semester, that question there, the Black-Scholes question that was a question in the exam paper, and that's the answer there on screen. And surprising how many students couldn't really figure that one out. It was in the assignment. It was on that paper. Anyhow. I won't become too negative anyhow. Right, so back here on this other pages, okay, so once again on these pages here, we're working here on sections 1 through 3, and this page contains a lot of stuff. Now, I guess one problem in this subject is I give students too much information to try and cope in a normal 12-week subject, okay? So don't get too concerned about all that junk that's there. But on this page here, if you try and focus on what's going on, if you click on the button which in fact says toggle, that toggle button there makes that detail much more concise, okay? Now anything shown in purple is a link to an external site. Not that important, but it might be useful to you, okay? So all the purple stuff's external. In the class today, the first hour or so is all about this sort of background stuff. And then the serious part after the break is in fact this part here in relation to, once again, these 4 major points, the interface, an exercise, entering data, cells and ranges, for example. Now on the screen here, there's a few things on the right-hand side. So once again, the purple stuff, external links. And on the screen here, for example, these ones here, like for example, 1.2.1, it's got a little box and a pencil. It's got the note there called Session Notes. And those session notes are in fact a summary of what I do in the class. They were designed to be done before we had in fact the recording session, but they're quite useful, I think. Okay, it's all there point by point, and they're all designed to be printed out on A4 paper if you choose to do that. Very good. Now they don't appear every week, but there are, there's one there for the phonics example and one there for cells and ranges. Okay. Now back here in section 1, this pencil on the right-hand side are in fact called in-file notes. There's the link in the document today which in fact opens up those notes inside your workbook in the class today. They might be useful, okay? But don't be too concerned about all the junk I give you because it's all useful, but have a think about the main points we cover in the class today. Okay. So I'm trying to make you into experts in Excel in 12 weeks, which is certainly achievable, but it can be a bit daunting for some students. Okay. Down the bottom here is in fact a discussion board. There's a discussion board each week. Now, for some reason, most students choose to ignore that feature. I don't know why. Perhaps you know everything. Fantastic. That's there because, as a lecturer, I get sort of annoyed when people even were saying, "Ian, please explain this." How many hours should I actually spend writing this thing? Okay, so last semester in the second assignment, one student asked me a question about what they had done, and it took me nearly a month to in fact figure out the answer, to in fact write a proper essay about how it's done properly. That's my style. I give you the complete answer, not just a short one. So that's the discussion board there. I guess you're certainly free to email me questions. And like last week, a student said to me, "Ian, my friends say we cannot use Mac. Is my machine okay?" I don't know. Look at the notes already which are there about that topic. Also on the page here, there are exercises. Make sure you try those. Once again, last semester and in the past, people say, "No, didn't pass the exam." Did you try the exercises? What exercises? Well, there it is. Like today, for example, exercise there. So I wrote this one yesterday, the brand new one. At the end of the class today, in topic number 3, we're going to do some Excel formulas here. It brings up a spreadsheet on screen. It's just Amazon data there from a US website. And you're required to, in fact, do certain things based upon that. And the answer appears, of course, on that website in early Saturday morning. But once again, please try the question before you look at the answer. Okay, that's the important part, because on the face of it, that's actually a bit of a challenging question. How do you actually, in fact, do it without using any functions? And once again, I could make the data 1,000,000 rows long. There's a couple of hundred. So you wouldn't, in fact, say 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. You do it a simpler way based on material in the 4th part of today's class. Okay. Rightio. So I'll just close that one down. And once again, there is, in fact, some quiz questions here. They might be based on, of course, multiple choice. Now, at the end of each week, I typically have some inspiration about things I should have covered. And if I, in fact, put material on this website after the week where the class has been held, it will say over here somewhere on the right-hand side, updated on a certain date. So anything shown in red with an update date has been added after the class has been held, either based on my sort of experience or questions provided by you, which have, well, that's a good question. Let's share the answer between different people there. Okay. So in the class today, once again, in the course outline, which I showed you before, in the course outline here, for example, in week number 1, we've got preliminary stuff and spreadsheeting, 0 to 3, 0 to 4. Those points here on that syllabus, of course, would appear here in this outline. There's the same points, so interface and so on, but in a lot more detail. It's almost roughly an exam sort of review page. What do you know about each of those points? You might say that's a lot of points there, but that's what I'm trying to cover in the subject. Okay. Very good. Any questions? Right. And the final 2 points here are, there's a link here called Search and Index. So basically the page I just showed you, this page here, because it's on a password protected page, it doesn't appear on a Google search engine. However, this stuff here on Search and Index, there's a lot of topics here, and all these topics here have in fact been indexed in a Google search engine. Okay. So for example, if I want to go in here and look at, for example, net present value type questions, put in the search term there, and on my website, all these documents here in fact, relate to aspects of NPV, and actually go from there and try and find things. Okay. So let's close that down for a second. So back here on this page, when you put your mouse over the points here, it shows you what's in fact contained in that, and some are purely VBA based. They, of course, relate to classes 7 through 12, and the other ones, of course, relate to the first half of the course. And some of these are, in fact, basically responses to student questions or just aspects of the course which are in the assignments. So as far as the assignments are concerned, a lot of stuff there is designed to help you out, because you won't find it typically in a textbook, and you mightn't even find it on other commercial sites either. Okay. Very good. And the final part there is on this page here, this contents page. This is in fact incomplete. This is also, I guess, similar to a textbook outline. This also links to those same documents, but this is only about half complete so far. You won't find everything here which appears on the index page, but I've tried to group it here into various categories. And on this page here, if we click on, for example, the toggle button at the top, it makes this page much more detailed. You can in fact go in here and do a Control F search and actually find stuff on that page as well. Okay. Now at this point you'll say, crikey, there's a lot of junk on these screens. Do we have to know it all? Well, you need to know about it anyhow. There are certain key things each class which are important, but all this stuff I believe is useful in financial modelling, whether it's for example, mundane stuff, research departments, PhDs or anything. I believe it's useful in finance, accounting and business. Don't know much about management, but I'm sure it's a good response, because in this class, of course, Master of Management have accounting people and all sorts of finance people. Many of you, of course, are from that discipline as well. Okay. Very good. So let's go now across to class number 1. And on the LMS, you should in fact find typically the one and only PowerPoint presentation we will cover this semester. So I'll go through it now. Some points I won't spend much time on at all. Okay, so in the area of financial modelling or spreadsheeting, the most important thing is Microsoft Excel. There are other packages which you can also use. One, of course, is called LibreOffice. Who's heard of LibreOffice? Anyone actually use the thing? Very good. And just for curiosity, or does someone use it professionally that you... Okay, so it actually came from a thing called OpenOffice, which has been sort of turned back. But okay, so LibreOffice, you wouldn't use it much, but it is in fact open source software. So if you're ever curious to figure out how does in fact a spreadsheet work, you can download the OpenOffice application, expand the thing out of a zip file, 348 megabytes of stuff, 64,000 files, and then figure out how it works. Okay. And it's good because if you're curious to know how Excel functions work, you can eventually find in that package where their functions are and see the source code. Ooh, interesting sort of stuff. Okay, but back to this stuff anyhow. So Excel Online, that's also used in my subject a bit, on my website. We can't use VBA there. It uses a JavaScript API. LibreOffice uses a version of BASIC, and Google Docs or a Sheets version, also online, it uses GAS, also a scripting language there in this subject. Okay, spreadsheet date comparisons. There are two corny ones there. One's in fact a Triple J link, which in fact talks about how you young people can use a spreadsheet to optimise your chances in love, it seems. Dating comparisons. Haven't read it, but that's one there. Okay, down the page here further. Once again, we're going to use spreadsheets in Excel. I don't want to spend too much time on these pages because they're fairly straightforward. We'll begin with VisiCalc. Lotus, in fact, was important back in the 80s, and of course, we of course use Excel these days. This link here is relating to a person about my age who talks about her experiences of using spreadsheets over the last 30 or 40 years or so. It's actually linking there to the Model Off website. Okay. Now in this area of spreadsheets, there aren't many academic documents referring to what spreadsheets in fact do, and there are several listed on that page there. So what I'm talking about currently is I'm looking here at aspects of, let's go back here a few pages for a second or two. So what am I talking about? On these pages here in relation to, oh, it's hard to find things here. I'm trying to find this page. On this page here, in relation to this preliminary stuff, it talks about spreadsheets being very, very useful. So once again, in Melbourne, people in Collins Street use it there. If you're based in Sydney, Pitt Street's the place to be. Wall Street, New York, Century Avenue, Pudong, and of course Raffles Place in Singapore, and so on, other sort of the financial centres around the world. And basically here, down the page, it refers here to references relating to both textbooks I've already covered and academic papers on this page. So if you're going to do a sort of a Google search on what's been written academically about spreadsheeting, you won't find very much. And this page here covers the main ones I found about 12 months ago. And the important ones here are the first one relating to Baker, and that's the abstract on that page just there. They virtually did a survey of modellers downtown and asked them what they in fact use Excel for. Okay. The second useful paper, the one down the bottom, they in fact did a survey of two major companies, looked at their spreadsheets and looked to see what sort of data had been included there and what functions they might in fact use in financial models in the real world. So that's the two papers. It's just that most students don't read them in any detail. Have a glance through them, but they're actually sort of interesting in one sense. Okay, it might be useful one day at the job interview. You know, you actually know what people do. Okay, so basically this first one here, referring to where we're going from the current slide. From current slide. So this paper, written in 2009, did a survey of spreadsheet users, and they had Groups A and Group B. And the Group B people that they surveyed were people who in fact used, spreadsheets were important in their jobs. In fact, they were critical. They were experienced in what they were doing. So very experienced and with high expertise in modelling. And most of the spreadsheets they created were 10,000 cells or more. So on this paper, the Group B people are similar to spreadsheet students at the MBS, a bit like you people. So the Group B people are a bit like you, okay? And on that screen there, it contains an extract from their article. It contains a column chart. The column chart talks about the main purpose of spreadsheets by group, and the Group B people, the professional people, are shown by the pink columns, okay? Now, I ask this question every semester, and every semester, first of all, no one will answer me, and the people I in fact ask the question don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, anyhow, so on the screen there, my question is, of the Group B people, what is the main purpose of the spreadsheet used by Group B people? And the answer is coming from the tallest column with the pink background. So identify the tallest pink column on the chart, go down to the bottom and look at the label on the axis, and, dear student, twiddling your pen there, the answer is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up. Okay, table 1. The label on the tallest pink column is down the bottom of the column. Oh, I don't know. This is a bit of a worry. Who knows the answer? Table number 5. Yeah, it's as simple as that. I don't know why it's so hard, anyhow. Yeah, yes, yeah, well, good. I like questions.
Yeah, when I'm trying to log in,
yep.
It's asking for username password.
Yes. Were you here half an hour ago?
Yeah, but I think I sort of missed that.
Well, for those who missed it, it can be done two ways. If your laptop in fact has a scanner, you can scan the barcode, or you can type in that junk.
Okay. Thank
You can borrow that. Okay. Who else needs some help? Who can't find the password? And would you believe, last semester, week number 11, a student asked me for the password to the website. Look, I've got to be careful because students have all sorts of issues, so I won't say any more than that. Okay, so that's what it's used for. The second most important one is evaluate alternatives and so on. Next page here talks about Excel functions. So they also asked people, this is a bit like that second article, what sort of functions do these models use? So basically here on the previous page, analysing data and making choices are pretty important. So basically here, the if function was used the most often. Okay. What do you think of that? The if function. I would probably say that the sum function is used more often, but anyhow, if function was used a lot there. So anyhow, that's what's going on. So virtually in the subject, as the weeks roll by, we'll cover most of these things. Now, sorting data, that's pretty easy. We won't spend much time on that. But everything else we in fact use here. Now, I don't in fact really cover data sorting or find and replace. The other stuff, though, of course, is used in the subject. And the second article here, I won't go through them. They did two-sized companies, a government sector company or government sector operation and a food company. They had analysis here of which functions are used by these people in their spreadsheets. But those authors here are in fact based in Ireland, and they're trying to promote a company which in fact does this analysis on a consulting basis. Just keep that fact in mind if you glance through the paper. So I won't say much more than that. Let's move on now to this stuff here, the boring stuff. You know, there's a computer keyboard. This is in fact a 103 US keyboard as used in Australia. It's like the one that appears here on these desktop PCs. Okay. So once again, because the cohort has changed this semester, it's possible that everyone who needs to know this mightn't be here anymore in the current subject. Anyhow, on the screen there, top left-hand corner, ESC means the escape key. And why do I say that? Well, as the weeks roll by, people say, Ian, it doesn't work. And I might say, press escape. Press escape. Hit escape. People say, huh? Huh? Press the escape key. Top left-hand corner of the keyboard. Huh? Anyhow, that's where it is. These things are called the function keys, function 1, function 2, function 3. Over here, that one under the 3 is important. It's called the pause break key. Now, these keyboards have it. We'll look at your laptop fairly soon. Okay. Down the screen here, some sort of navigation keys. Now, when I first bought my first computer in 1985, it was in fact a MyTAC XT computer. It had a 4.77 megahertz processor, 640K of memory. Okay. Cost me $1,000 back then. And I had the luxury of a hard disk. The hard disk, I hummed and hawed because a 10 megabyte hard disk cost me $1,000. Okay, 10 megabytes. And I thought I was just fantastic. Okay. Anyhow, back then, of course, we didn't have a mouse. We only used keyboard navigation, and we had no Windows environment. So I, in fact, use these navigation keys quite a bit. Over here, once again, Shift, Control, and Alt, and so on. That's the keyboard there. Okay. Now, on the screen here, actually talks about the control break combination. So the control key, key number 6, you press in the control key, then you press the break key second. On a Lenovo T43U laptop, okay, it has no break key. It doesn't appear on the keyboard, okay? But the PC's handbook says that function B, so this function key, function and the B key, has the same effect as the break key on a conventional keyboard. Okay? So if you have a Lenovo, that might help you. The next Lenovo, however, doesn't in fact have one, but basically on the previous page here, the F1, look, on the first screen, it only has function keys. Function 1, function 2, function 3. This one here has F1, F2, F3 in the same fashion, but it also has microphone or speaker minus, speaker mute, speaker plus and so on. To make those speaker keys work, you typically have to press something like the function key to make those speakers work, but the function key is still, just press F1 and F1 operates. On other machines, however, this one here, the function key is lowercase. So those keys there, pressing that button will in fact mute the speaker. To make the F1 key work, you have to in fact hold down this function key at the bottom. So function F1, for example, or function F4, in fact, makes that combination work. And we do in fact use the function keys a lot in this subject. Okay, that's all. Any questions? Very good. Okay. Next thing talks about dates and dollars. And I asked this question in the class, it seems like hours ago, but it was actually only at midday today. And when I run this class 4 times a week, I don't really know what's going on, because if I give the first one Monday and the second one Thursday morning, which week am I in? What have I told? You know, there's 2 in one day, next one's tomorrow afternoon. So nice and compact, I can remember what I said in each class. And the concept of dates and dollars in finance, so word association, dates, dollars and finance. On table number 4, what comes to mind? So I'll ask table number 4 first of all. 2 students here. So dates and dollars and the word finance. Word association. What comes to mind? What degree are you doing?
Accounting. I was thinking like end of financial year. Like.
Oh, accounting. Oh, you should know anyhow. What are you doing, young lady?
Finance.
Finance. Okay, you're a perfect victim then. Okay, have a think. Who can help her out?
NPV.
Fantastic. Or more correctly, so NPV is a...
Present value.
Sorry?
The present value.
Yes, but you know, in a more general sense, so you know, undergraduate stuff. The time value of money. 4 words, so time value of money. So time and value, dates and dollars. That's the concept there. Of course, it's crucial to NPV and all that stuff there. So basically here, in Excel, in finance, of course, dates and dollars are very important because they were the foundation there for time value of money. And basically here, in Excel for Windows, time began on the 1st of January 1900. So 1/1/1900 is in fact day 1. Very good. So today is in fact day, with your fingers, about 43,000 or something. Okay. So time began then. Now, on the Excel for Mac, it in fact started in 1904. So basically, February 2015 was in fact day 42,000, but on a Mac system, that same day is in fact day 40,597. So if you end up in one system and switch across to the other, your February date in 15 might end up as being February 2011. Okay, just be aware of that difference between Mac and Windows. Next question for you people is, why is this so? Okay, any ideas there? Why do Mac and Windows have different starting dates? Different by 4 years there. Okay, so what's important in the calendar about a 4-year cycle? Well, one thing is the Olympic Games occur every 4 years. And what's the feature of the Olympic Games year? So 2000, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Who's got a birthday in February? Probably not, well, some of you will, but you mightn't have one on the 29th. So basically there were dates. We know that in the calendar, every fourth year is in fact a leap year, isn't it? Okay. Now what's the important feature about, so once again, leap years occur every fourth year, okay, because the Earth, doesn't go it evenly, but it doesn't in fact turn a quarter of a turn extra. So every 100 years, they in fact skip a year, a leap year, okay? Rightio. So if the year is divisible by 100, then you skip a leap year, okay? Then you might say the year 2000 had a leap year, also had Olympic Games year. So I guess the Olympic Games and the leap years aren't perfectly synchronised because they couldn't skip an Olympic Games anymore, could they, given the money involved? Anyhow, it turns out that the 100 and divisible by 4 is the problem. So basically, the year 1900 was not a leap year, okay? Because it can't be divided by 400. So when they wrote the programs back in the early 80s, the programmers didn't remember that 1900 wasn't in fact a leap year, and in Excel, February 29, 1900 is treated as a leap year when in fact it was not. So in fact, on the calendar there, February 2015, that's in fact day number 42058, not 059. Therefore, Mac are more clever. They skipped 1900 and started 4 years later to solve the problem. Okay? That's what goes on in that environment there. So just be aware of those systems. And once again, it won't occur very often. But in this class, sometimes in the past, I've had people... Now, if you open up a file from me on a Mac or a Windows environment, the dates will be correct. But if you, in fact, download data from a website somewhere onto your Mac system, then you might, in fact, have things out by 4 years. Okay. Next thing here talks about the rule of 2029. So it's the year 2029 and the year 1930. So any date between those 2 points, okay, so if you put in a date, for example, as the 1st of January 17, just put the year in as a 2-character string, like the year 17, that's in fact in the year 2017, okay. But if you have a current bond which expires in the year 2035, and you say it in fact expires on, the 1st of June 35, it actually means 1935, not 2035, okay? So basically there, given that we're getting so close to the year 2029, when you put in, for example, dates in relation to like bond pricing, always put them in as a 4 number rather than 2 numbers because of that rule. Now, we don't do much work on that. Just be aware of that thing called the 2029 rule. It's still around. I don't know what they'll do soon. They're going to have to change it at some point in time, so it makes no sense as the years roll by. I'll be either retired or dead by then, but think about that in your future careers. Okay. Now, you can in fact change Excel to change those base numbers, but never change them because it creates chaos. You don't know what's going on anymore. So that's about the 2029 rule. Getting on to dollars now. So on the screen here, we in fact have dollars and cents separated by a dot or a period. Okay, it's just like a full stop separates dollars and cents. But around the world, however, things vary considerably. So in much of Europe, for example, like Spain here, the euros and the cents are separated by a comma rather than a dot. And they in fact use a dot as the thousand separator rather than a comma. So basically here, when you have an international company, spreadsheets might in fact have different separators there in the model. Okay, so once again, Europe uses a comma. We in fact use a dot. Corsican ones use a comma for the cents, but the thousands here are separated by a space. And bottom right-hand corner here, India. So in this subject a little while back, someone in fact changed their laptop to in fact Rather than having English Australia, they chose English India by mistake, and all of a sudden on their spreadsheet it actually had this situation. 3 characters, comma, 2 characters, 2 characters, 2 characters. Never seen it before in my life, but anyhow, from experiencing that one, that's the convention in India about how it's formatted, that's all. But the important part is, once again, the separator here. So in this subject, I assume we're going to use the dot to separate the dollars and the cents. Simple as that. Okay. Okay, what question comes to that? So if you work on an international corporation where you've got offices in Europe and Australia and the USA, can one spreadsheet have both dots and commas in the one workbook? And the answer is probably no, okay? Because I don't really know of any way to set up Excel to in fact have that switching point between the two, okay? Moving along. Okay, so in the subject I assume you're going to use Australian regional settings. I don't know what if people don't do that, but that's my expectation. So once again in Australia we in fact have days, months and years. That's for the formats there. This page talks about, for example, dates and things. All these ways of expressing numbers here, but basically in Australia we in fact have the day first, the month second and the year third. So I'm going to in fact here use the Australian location. On this page here just shows you, instead on this screen, that the number shown there in the formula bar, depending upon the format, can in fact have different sorts of presentations here. Okay. The first one there is accounting. Second one here is in fact a currency format, unformatted, and the bottom one there is scientific. And they're all the same sort of number there on screen. Quickly moving on, finding your way. So basically here on screen, I'll get back to that in a second or two, but that's talking about a thing called the get cell function. I'll show that back in the spreadsheet fairly soon. Final part here is you already bought a computer. Who cares about that? Make sure you know about the break key. Do you have one or not? And the important part here is, when is the break key important? It's important in VBA programming, okay? Which of course most people don't do. That's why most laptops don't in fact have a break key anymore. If you have a Dell laptop, you're probably on your own there because they don't help you at all, okay? So basically in this subject, in one class, remember class number 8, I will in fact show you a process in VBA, and I will say, if you don't have a break key, do not do this, okay? And I'm going to do a loop, for example. I'm going to go from 1 to 10. And I'm going to go 1 to 10,000. And I'll show you that in that class. If I go from 1 to 10,000, I can press the OK button, but given the way the code is written, I can't escape the loop. I've got to press the button 20,000 times, okay? Then last semester, every semester it happens, I'll say, if you don't have a break key, don't do this. Ian, what do I do? Or pull out the battery or something. You can't escape from it. Okay. Enough on that one. If you've got get a mouse that's quite good. Use Windows 10 if you can. Some of us we're still using Windows 8. Why didn't they upgrade for free? Don't know, but anyhow, Windows is okay. 2016, MBS Students is free, and you can download the stuff from a website. Okay. So it's only 7:28. Let's have a little bit of a break there for 10 minutes. Okay. But for a bit to cover when we come back. At this current point in time, got any questions, please ask now. I don't really appreciate questions at 9:15, okay, when you could have asked halfway through. So there's a lot to cover when we come back, so I'm giving you a 10-minute chance to have a break, so if no one leaves in 5 minutes to exercise themselves, I'll restart a bit earlier, just to go home earlier if you like, but anyhow. Yes.
I'm Leonard. I'm working today for the enrollment. I don't know if you know me. And I'm not approved on the web page I can enroll. Is it like, do I have to do the enrollment evaluation form again? Or?
I don't know what happens, but people like you, I say I've approved it,
Yeah.
and
So I just have to wait, or-
you send that somewhere. You have to do something next. So I've told you I've approved it.
Mhm. Okay, so I
Then,
still do
that
the...
email I've sent you
Yeah.
goes somewhere,
Mhm.
and they'll say yes, you do it.
Okay. So I do the enrollment declaration form again, and then...
I don't know.
Okay.
But everyone else in your situation, the problems got solved fairly soon.
Okay.
Because when you were knocked back, it says that you need the lecturer's approval to do this.
Mhm.
And I've given you approval.
Mhm.
So whoever knocked you back, you send in the approval.
Okay, just the message. Okay. And another thing, I
Yep.
have also a Mac, and you said that we should install Windows 10. So can't we do this course with the Excel 2016 for Mac? Is it like
I was
Is it
trying
not-
to say before, so Excel for Mac doesn't have VBA.
Are you sure? Even
Well,
though-
I spent thousands of dollars on my home PC.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a VBA module there, but it doesn't do anything.
Okay.
So if you've got the VBA code, it will run on the Mac, but you can't write the stuff.
Okay, you can just do it.
It's totally rudimentary.
Okay.
It doesn't
That's
do
how they
anything.
differentiate themselves.
So in Excel 2000, in Mac 2008, they killed it completely.
Yeah.
People complained. 2011 it came back again, fanfare. 2016, it's been cut back to almost nothing.
So 11 was better then.
Yeah, but it came back.
Yeah, but we could do this course with Excel 2011.
I believe so.
I just needed it.
Yeah,
and
we
went to 2016 because I think
Just open a virtual desktop. That's
Yeah.
what the MBS does. You just open a virtual desktop on
Yeah.
your Mac, and you just use that for Excel. You don't
I
have to
think
do
the
anything.
performance is enough on the 5-year-old Mac. So
So in this subject, the biggest thing is your mouse faster.
Yeah.
We don't do much in the class. The assignments are a
But
bit
we do
slow.
VBA programming.
Yes, but most of the stuff we do, we're not doing sort of all this intensive stuff. We're just
Yeah.
doing basic skills.
Yeah.
So we might do a thing 10 times. Imagine it's going to run for 1 million, but to save time, we'll just do 10.
Yeah, okay.
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 It's like, for example, I'll give you 100 data points, but imagine there's 1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can't really use the mouse on 1 million, but that's all. So once again, both Windows and Office are provided to you under University license. I use it myself at home.
Yeah.
Okay, you have it
I'm
on
just
five
not sure if
PCs.
when I install Windows on my Mac, I think the performance is going to be pretty...
Well, I don't really. I've only got this whiz bang thing I spent my thousands of dollars on recently, but you either do it under Boot Camp, or there's some sort of other virtual one you can switch between the two.
And one last
Parallels.
question, if we install it via the uni, so we can just take it because we are exchange students and not here.
No, so
Is it like full version or is it...
no, it's the whole package, but you need to in fact have a valid university login to in fact activate.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have
we
it.
have it.
But we are
Yeah.
just here for half a year.
Yes, well when you leave, it'll cease to work. Okay.
Okay.
So on my home versions, if the internet is off, I can't use this package because it's got to have a
Even
valid.
Windows.
Sorry?
The whole thing, even Windows.
I don't know about Windows. No, I've got my own Windows version, but the Office
Yeah.
system requires a valid communication.
Okay, but the Windows we are installing by the uni, that's also uni Windows.
I've never
There
used
was
it.
a-
I do know it's
Windows
available for
Visual
students.
to the...
Yes, it is. Yeah, I've used it before.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Alright,
thanks.
Who's next? Yes.
I just wanted to, I've already filled an enrollment variation form. I'm eligible to do this subject,
Yep.
but it's just that it's just not letting me enroll. If there's some issue with the study planner, so I just wanted to, if it's okay, if I can just come to this class.
Yep. Well, you're already here, aren't you? So that's fine. No,
Yeah,
there's plenty of
they just
space
said
now.
that-
The only hassles
Yeah.
I have is
Yeah.
on the first class each semester. In the past, there's been 80 seats, 120 people show up. It's chaos.
Yeah.
But this year,
Yeah.
they've all been scared off.
Yeah. People
And this
are really
semester,
scared.
this morning, there were 80 seats, 76 students, and there was no overflow.
That's good.
So the must-pass exam has worked wonders.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's it.
So I just wanted to ask, the end-term exam, the final exam, will it be in the labs? So can
No,
we use...
no, it's a closed book at the REB
So
exhibition
we have
building.
to use our laptops?
No, you just use pen and paper.
Okay, okay. So if I can come to the lab for practice and for assignments, is it okay because I have a MacBook?
No, that's fine. No. So in the assignments mostly you can use, or in the class you can use any of these desktop ones if you can get access to them.
So,
In the assignments you can use just the computer labs.
yeah, so
Okay.
that's okay.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, so as far as Excel is concerned, on Excel for Mac, just to repeat, on that Mac version, the current version, VBA is there, but it does nothing. I recommend you write your code in Windows, go across to Mac and see what happens. Nothing to do with me, it's to do with free version of Windows and Office. Some of you might choose not to, use these desktop computers or and also on Mac, so a Mac only has a mouse with one button. So by default, a Mac mouse has no right click function. You also find out. So let's in fact go into Mac and, sorry? Okay, if you go change your Mac, you can make the right click thing work. Okay, I'll start fairly soon, but because the lecturer before me was using this cordless microphone, it's been off the charge for 6 hours now, and it's actually lost charge, so at least I've actually got a microphone here which I can speak into, so. There's still 1 or 2 students missing, so I'll start in about another minute or two. Any other questions? Okay, so in this subject, each semester I'm the lecturer in charge, and I typically find that not many students in fact ask me for any advice in my consultation time. So I encourage you to make use of those times, please. In the assignments, I am not part of a group, therefore I don't really appreciate being thought of as a group member. I'm here to help all students equally rather than one group in isolation. So basically at assignment time a lot more students ask questions then. Typically they ask them by email, and if you do send me your email questions, make sure that from my perspective I can figure out what you are asking. Okay, you know, we did this and it didn't work. You know, what does that mean? It didn't work. Oh, groan. Very good. Okay, I'll in fact start now. So basically on this machine, I haven't in fact used this laboratory since last semester. So I will go in now into Excel. I've actually got Excel 2013 here, which isn't too bad. So I'll go into Excel 2013 and just check on my settings here. So I'll go in here and just open up a brand new blank spreadsheet for a short time here. I'll go into the File tab and just check my options here. and look at my security settings. This is a rather cumbersome thing to go through. So on this document here, I've in fact got disable all macros with notification. So basically, all the workbooks that I give you during semester contain macros, and by their very nature, some macros can be what they call malicious or dangerous. So only ever open a workbook with macros from a trusted source, and if it's sent to you by email, make sure you expect to receive the email, because we know that certain people get hold of your friends' addresses, send you this junk, and of course they're trying to possibly do ransomware and charge you zillions to in fact unlock your PC. So on this page here it actually says disable all with notification. Now about 3 years ago on my computer upstairs, which in fact has Excel 2010, when the university IT department took over from the faculty, they installed a brand new version of Excel on my PC upstairs, and it virtually just said disable all without notification, and I couldn't in fact select any of these other options on my PC because IT proclaimed macros are dangerous. Ian O'Connor, you can't use them. Well, I teach this subject, how do I... Anyhow, they sort of relented and gave me permission, but sometimes in a corporate environment, your IT department could in fact override these things because, once again, it's better to be safe than sorry. So if you don't know about macros, once again, that's the safest setting. Okay, so I'll just close that down. And if you're going to change those settings there, you can't change the settings on an open workbook. So I'll go in here and close that down. I'll now go in and open up the Class 1 Semester 2 workbook. So each week I'll give you a workbook like this. And because it contains macros, you in fact see this security warning up the top. So as a user, I've got to intentionally click on that button to in fact activate the macros. Very good. Now in this class, every semester, some people use these desktop PCs, and when you log off, it resets back to the default setting. You can't run macros, okay? So if you choose to use the desktop computer, before you start each week, you must in fact change the settings before you in fact open the file, okay? So I can trust this file, I hope. I'll go in here and click on that button, okay? Okay, so let's get underway here. Once again, some of tonight's class is sort of pretty routine to many people. So first of all, what version of Excel am I using? I can find out the answer a number of ways. This workbook here contains some macros. I'll go in here and click on this button on the screen, that version button. I'll see on the screen here that in fact, I'm currently in fact using here Excel 2013 64-bit and information there about the build number and so on. So what you ought to do, and that in fact contains a macro, and around about class number 10, I will show you in fact how to in fact write the macro to in fact make boxes like that appear on screen for you. Okay. So in this class I assume certain basic skills. I assume you can all do data entry, editing and deletion, but I will in fact review that material today in session number 3 here. I also assume that you can find your way here around the Home tab. There's a picture there of an earlier version, but this is in fact the Home tab here on the ribbon. It contains font stuff, alignment, numbers, styles, cells, editing on a standard procedure. Okay. So I can't really spend any time on that background material in the class. I also assume that you can in fact do basic charting, which might be a big ask sometimes, but you know, can you in fact do a chart or not on the screen there. Okay. If I click on any cell here down the page, if I go in here and just type in a simple formula, for example, equals 2 times 2, okay. There's my formula there in the cell. When I press the Enter key, of course, you know now that, of course, that cell only displays the answer. If I select the cell, the formula appears up here in the formula bar, but I can't in fact see that formula there on the right-hand side. So in this workbook, there are 2 ways to in fact find the answer. I can go to the right-hand side here and start to type a formula. And I've written a custom macro called getCF. So let's get something. Let's get the cell formula here. It's in fact a function. So I type in getCF. I click on the cell which contains the formula, close the bracket there, and it shows me now that that cell H39 contains equals 2 times 2. That function has been around for some number of years. But a little while back in Excel, they in fact introduced a feature called formula text, which does a similar thing. There it is there on screen. Okay, if I go in again and put in a formula, just copy that down. Now on Excel, I think it's Excel 2010 onwards, I can go in here and type in formula text, refer to the cell. It doesn't return the reference, but it actually shows you what the formula is there on screen. So as we go through the workbooks week after week, having information about what the formula contains is in fact quite useful for revision purposes. And generally in this subject, my convention is, if I'm going to show this, I in fact give those cells there typically a colour like one of these salmon colours, just to show you, in fact, I in fact have information there about the formula. So it's either done there with a getCF formula or with formula text. Okay. Any questions there? End of the first worksheet. Let's move on now to Class 1 Intro. This contains a lot of junk, so we won't spend too much time on this. So in today's class, there are 4 major points to go through. In this workbook, in-cell editing has been disabled. That means that typically to in fact edit things, you must in fact use the formula bar rather than edit in cell. The reason is I'm trying to distinguish between formulas done in the formula bar and the result shown in the cell in the workbook. Okay. This workbook also contains what we call a custom user interface. On the Home tab here, on the right-hand side, there's a group called XLF Tools. That's a function or a group I've in fact written myself. Okay. And you might say, who cares? Well, it's easy to go into Excel and customise the ribbon, but the customisation stays on the machine. It's easily done. But if you're working for a customer and want the customer to get a file which contains custom features for that person, then it's done a special way. It can't be done the easy way. And this example here shows you, for example, click on that button that tells me there about the Excel version. Click on that. There's the same box that I've shown you before on screen. Anyhow, to write that code is not quite easy. It's on my website, but it's just showing you how it can in fact be done in relation to a custom group in a file which is in the actual file and not on the machine where it's been run from. Okay. Once again, it contains certain features here on screen. Okay. So in Excel 2013 onwards, so Excel 2013 in fact has I think 2016 mightn't have a close button on that page. There's some weird feature about the later version anyhow. Okay, let's move on now. So as far as we're concerned in the subject, we're going to do financial spreadsheeting or financial modelling. It is spelt 2 ways, 1L or 2. It depends on whether you've got a US orientation or English, Australia, UK orientation. Okay, doesn't really matter very much, but be aware of those 2 different spellings there. Okay, which is correct? Oh, I'm not really certain because my website's based in the US. Many people who visit my website from around the world, I don't know where they come from, but they read that stuff from US base. And of course, this subject is really the 1L version. But look, if you're doing a PhD in finance here, 1L is probably important, but otherwise 2Ls might be better. We do business analytics. We've, of course, just gathered data, manipulation, analysis, presentation, and reports. That's really the focus of the subject and with the focus of both of the assignments. Now on the screen here is in fact some data. That data there, in fact, is relating to stock price data from 2009. It's actually for ANZ Bank. It's coming from just a public website. There's so the first trade, so the Australian Stock Exchange opens at 10 a.m. And on that date back in July 2009, ANZ opened there at $18.31. At 4 p.m. on the same date, when the ASX closed, the last trade there was $18.53. And during the day, the highest price was $18.83, and the lowest price during the day was $18.04. There were 32 million shares traded on that date, and this website contains both a closing price and an adjusted closing price. And you might say, how are those two different? Okay. Well, they tell us on the website that the adjusted closing price is adjusted for both stock splits and consolidations, and also for dividends. But in most cases, the closing price and the adjusted closing price are the same number. So on this page here, when you move your mouse pointer over that area, it changes from being an open white cross over here to in fact a pointy arrow type thing. If you click once inside this area, look in the name box up here, it's called picture number 5. This is in fact a picture of data contained elsewhere in the file. You must say, why is that important? Well, basically here, this picture is dynamic. So if I go to my appendix page here and change the data, this is the real data here which you can change. If you change this data here, this picture updates on this screen automatically. Okay? And you might say, why am I doing that? Well, basically here, this worksheet contains some very narrow columns. And these columns extend all the way down the page for 1 million rows. So to try and make the columns here the right width for this data, I don't want to change my background columns. I've in fact used a picture on screen to in fact make the columns in the background have no impact on the data which appears here on the front page. Okay. Now that data's pretty hard to interpret. You know, what sense can you make of that? Well, it's useful, but you know, lots of it's pretty hard to interpret. Of course, down the page here, this chart of the open, high, low, close data is in fact open, high, low, close. This is coming from the data here on this page. So this data here is in fact much more useful in relation to those 4 observations. Now this is in fact a stock price chart. It's already built into Excel. It's a special thing called an open, high, low, close chart. Now for those doing finance and accounting and sort of things, what's another name for that chart type? Candlesticks. I like that one. It isn't exactly one, but it's very, very similar, I think. Another one might be called a box and whisker. Sometimes 2 as well. Anyhow. So basically here, obviously on each one of these data points, the top of the line is in fact the high price. The bottom one, of course, is the low. And it can either open low and open high and close low and whatever, or the reverse. So virtually here, the black and the white indicate whether it actually, in fact goes down during the day or up during the day. Now I can never remember which is the black and which is the white. Hopefully the white should be going up, I suppose. The black should be going down, logically you would think, but you might be going short or long, mightn't you? It might be a different story. Anyhow, this is in fact called an open, high, low, close chart. It often appears in your first assignment. I harp on about this over and over again because in the assignment, too many groups, when they're asked to produce an open, high, low, close chart, I don't see one of those. It's got 4 lines rather than box and whiskers or candlesticks, for example. Anyhow, that's the story there. Quickly moving on, about volatility here. This is probably based on this return series. Now, so once again, these charts here should be useful in trying to analyse the data. Quickly moving down the page here, a little bit about automation. So on the screen here is actually a button called Option Pricer. And this time, if you click on here, on the Option Pricer button, on the screen now in fact appears a customised box which we can in fact write ourselves. So on the screen here, let's suppose we've got an option exercise price of $42. Let's suppose here that the current stock price is 42, the exercise price might be 40. The risk-free interest rate might be, for example, 5%. Stock volatility here might be 20% per annum. Now in the Black-Scholes model, for example, there are 5 input parameters. I've only put in 4 of them so far. And on this current module here, the current option price is blank. So as soon as I type any valid number in the 5th box, whether it be the top or the bottom one, put in a 1, for example, like a 1 year, immediately the answer here appears on screen in the box. Okay. Now this box, I can also go in here and price a European call or a European put, or an American style call or an American put. So I'll make it a European call. And obviously you also use the Black-Scholes model or the binomial model, a choice of those parameters. Okay. Now once again, Excel doesn't have one of these things built in. This has been a custom version written for you people. And there's my data there. I can also go in here now and click in this output range. These buttons here have been blacked out. Click in that range here. Click on a cell, a blank cell there in Excel. Hit the Enter key. So I should just click on the side here. Hit the Enter key. And now I can either print out just the number or the full output. Click on full output here. There's the answer going back there to Excel on the screen. Okay, so in the second part of the course, we spend some time in trying to develop these customised modules to make your life easier. Okay, but that thing on screen is a lot of work to figure out the logic behind how it works. Okay. So when we talk about automation, that's what we're trying to aim for in the second part of the course. Okay, let's close that down. Any questions so far? So once again, data gathering from some source, data analysis, and presentation. Typically the presentation here would be, for example, in a chart or in a summary report giving the minimum and the maximum and some sort of summary of the data rather than having the raw data there on screen. Okay, next page here about the Excel interface. Okay, so once again, I'll just go through some basic points here in the current semester. There mightn't be any students who need this stuff, but basically we talk about here the interface. So once again, on the screen here is the interface for Microsoft Excel. It's in fact called the application. And of course, these days, application is too long. Everything these days, of course, is an app, but we still call it application here in this environment. Most of the workbooks that we use in the class have in fact got an XLSM extension. That means they contain macros. In your assignment number 1, it contains no macros. You give to me an XLSX file. It's just a straightforward Excel file. Now, Excel could contain at least one workbook. In my current environment here, I've only got one workbook open, okay? But there could be, in fact, more than one workbook open at a time, okay? Each workbook contains a number of worksheets. The workbook must contain at least one worksheet, but in the class today, we've got these worksheets here shown by these worksheet tabs. Once again, that's a very, very basic concept. You should also know what I'm talking about. But it seems like, you know, in week number 12, some students last year were saying, what's a worksheet? I don't know. Can't believe it sometimes. Anyhow, so worksheets, there can be lots of those, and basically on each worksheet contains 1,048,576 rows. Everyone contains that many. You can't make it bigger or smaller. Now, who knows where that number comes from? Why is it that precise number? Yes, sir, you're looking very intelligent over there. It doesn't pay to wear a business shirt in this class, you see. Okay, so... Sorry? Yes, I know you did. That's why I said looking very intelligent there, young man. On the right-hand side, let's just go in here. I'm going to type in 2 to the power 2 exponent 20. So 2 to the power 20. Hit the enter key, what do you see? That very same number. So 2 to the power 20 is the number of rows in the spreadsheet. Number of columns is 16,384 equals 2 to the power 14. 2 to the power 14 is in fact the number of columns. So once again over here, equals get CF. That's where they're coming from. So once again, so if you multiply those together, 2 to the power 34 is in fact 17 billion cells per spreadsheet, per worksheet. What of cells? You can't change the size. 17 billion per worksheet. Okay? That's just an important fact. You cannot change the size of a worksheet. Now, on the worksheet here, when I go down the page, typically the data starts up here in the top left-hand corner. And on the screen here, I can scroll down and see the last row of data somewhere down the bottom. But how do you know there isn't more stuff down the bottom over on the right-hand side there? Okay. So I can actually zoom out here. When I zoom out, I can see here on the screen my data. It goes in the page here in a column sort of thing. It appears to stop around about that spot just there somewhere. Okay. So on a spreadsheet, which could contain lots of data, now some annoying people put data in weird spots. Okay. I don't know, just annoying. Happens in the assignments. Annoying students put this data in weird spots, okay, just to annoy me. So let's go back to 100% magnification here. To find where the data ends on a spreadsheet can be done two ways. There's in fact a shortcut key, or I can go to the Home tab. On the right-hand side called Find and Select. On the Find and Select group, there's an item called Go to Special. It's quite useful. Go to Special. And on this one here, there's a thing called Last Cell. That's the bottom right-hand corner cell which contains data. So on this particular worksheet, last cell, click on OK. Oh, that didn't work very well, did it? Okay, so once again, that's the last cell which contains data. This thing here is on the drawing layer. It didn't in fact pick that one up anyhow. It contains the last cell on the spreadsheet which contains data. That's the bottom area there in the current worksheet. That's all. So you can't change the size, and to find the last bit of data, that thing called last cell in fact finds that spot. Now, in the exam, I occasionally ask the question that we have this spreadsheet here. We have this spreadsheet. Let's go to the very last row. There it is, last row. 1 million, blah, 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 blah. I might go in here, select those rows, and go in here and click on the delete key. There you go. So if I go to a spreadsheet, if I delete 100 rows, how many rows are left? Now I can actually see the answer here. It doesn't change the size. But in an exam question, first of all, you might say, that's a bloody stupid question, Ian. But based on class number 1, I'm just going to emphasise, you can't change the size. And when it contains data, where does it end down the bottom? So basically, in the exam which you sit in a closed book exam, the exam contains an attachment sheet, and the first page of the attachment sheet tells you that number. There it is, 1,048,576. You don't need to remember it because you get the attachment sheet before the exam and you know roughly where things are. That's all. Okay. Now, because a little while back when I asked the question, one group in particular got very, 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 very upset with me about that question because how dare I make them lose 2 marks. Oh, anyhow. Rightio, that's about the number of rows. So quickly moving on because I'm talking too much waffle at this stage. Moving on, now let's look now a bit more of navigation points here. This talks about this top part up the top. So once again, let's look at the important parts first of all. On this top part here, there are 2 key points. This box here on the left-hand side where my pointer is called the name box. When you put your mouse pointer over the box, it in fact says name box. That's called the name box. Once again, as the weeks roll by, I might say click in the name box. Now, once again, students who seem to ask me questions are the ones who need the most help, but they often can't remember what I meant by the name box. There it is, and to its right is a thing called the formula bar. So name box and formula bar are very, very important. Clear on that? Okay. These diagrams here, other things. This part up here is called the QAT, the Quick Access Toolbar. In Excel 2007 was the first time they brought in the ribbon, and in Excel 2007 you couldn't in fact customise the ribbon at all. So the QAT can in fact still be customised. Go to the right hand side here, and you can in fact go down the bottom here and add or change the commands which appear there. Now on this screen here, there's one in fact called All Commands. There's a huge list here. There are lots of them. How many are there? I can't remember. Check out my website. I in fact counted them once. I've actually got a list there of how many there were, in fact number. And somewhere here you might in fact find a thing called the camera. Somewhere there's a thing in fact called camera. I can add it there on screen and now appears there on the QAT. Okay. So just be aware what it is. You might in fact use it very much, but that's quite useful. Okay. Final points here. This is the ribbon. Ribbon contains a number of tabs, and each tab contains a group. There's the clipboard group, the font group, alignment group, and so on. They're called groups on the ribbon. Very good. Another important point here is on the ribbon, this thing on the right-hand corner here is called a dialog launcher. So basically here on the font group, not everything fits in that group. Click on the button here and it pops up another box on screen. That's all. It's called the dialog launcher. Bit of trivia, but occasionally, I talk about it in the class as we go by. What do I mean by the dialog launcher? Okay. Quickly moving on, that's enough about that one. Just to repeat the main points here, the name box and the formula bar are the important ones. Okay, when you type a formula in the formula bar here, we'll cover formulas fairly soon, but a formula has a maximum of 8192 characters. In other words, it's actually 2 to the power 13. And you might say, who cares about that? Well, in class number 4, we'll do certain work there on a database, and the error will in fact say, whatever you're doing exceeds 8192. And the reason is, you're trying to make the formula bar show something which is much bigger than 8192 characters. That's why the error occurs in that class. Okay, so once again, you might have a very big formula. I can in fact make this formula bar much bigger. We'll cover that a little bit later in the class. I can in fact expand that bar to see things more easily on screen. And before I go much further, up the top is actually a thing called session notes. So basically this one here links to my website. So once again, on this page here, there are certain documents, information. I used to print them out into PDF documents once for you. I don't anymore, but it can be done. So on this page here, a lot of the stuff on this page appears here in these session notes. If I click on that button there, it brings up on screen, would you believe, a user form in VBA Excel, which in fact refers to a website. And you can move this around on screen and actually see the notes there in the background. Okay. Now on this page here, the pictures are quite small. Click on the picture, it becomes much larger, and go back there and see what's going on. Okay, so once again, you could in fact do this stuff in a worksheet once, but because of security reasons, that's been scrapped in 2016. But you can actually still do the same website access there in a user form. So I'll just minimise that or close it down for a short time. Okay, once again, there's lots of charts here on screen. I won't show much work on that. Let's look now at a thing called, what am I talking about here? I'll get to the page here now and now talk about a workbook. So as far as the workbook's concerned, we've got column headings here, row headings on the left-hand side. And on this screen here, just be aware of what those terms in fact refer to. And the important part here is a thing called the active cell. So on the screen here, you need to know what we mean by the active cell. And you've all got a one-page handout given to you. If you haven't got the handout, there's some spillage at the front here. So a one-page colour handout, just refer to that now for a short time. So basically on the screen here, when I click on a cell in Excel, that becomes what I call the active cell. There is only ever one active cell. When there's only one of them like that, its address appears up here in the name box. So I'm currently here in column N, row 168. In the name box there, it actually shows N168. Okay. This is the handout you've been given. So I'll go in here and type in, I call these my 5 favourite numbers. Nice and quick. Oh, very good. Welcome to the class. So on the screen here, I've got my 5 favourite numbers. Okay. Those numbers contain a blank column on the left, a blank row at the top, a blank row at the bottom, and a blank column on the right-hand side. If I click anywhere in the number area, I've now got what we call a thing called the current region. So on that handout you've been given, there are 3 important terms up the top area. On the left-hand side, it refers to the active cell. And on the right-hand side, the red box there talks about the current region. And the other one, in fact, refers to a thing called the selection. So on this data here, okay, the area of data around the active cell is called the current region. So the current region goes from numbers 1 to 5. So if your active cell is inside a data area, to select the current region, the quick way is to go Control A. And Control A, on the handout there, left-hand side, second blue panel under Windows Shortcuts. Down the bottom there, Control plus A, select the current region. And now, the active cell is shown by the white background. Up here in the name box, the active cell's address is shown up here in the name box, but the current region is in fact those 5 numbers. Okay. On the screen down the bottom is a thing called the status bar. In the status bar, when your current region contains numbers, down here it actually shows, for example, those numbers have an average of 3, they count to 5, and a sum there of 15. So when you select the data like that, this in fact summarises the key points about the data. Now I could in fact go in here and select a subset. So in that case there, the active cell is the number 1. My selection is in fact the numbers 1, 2 and 3, but the current region is in fact the numbers 1 to 5. Okay? They're pretty important concepts, and they're very important when we get to VBA. So once again, if I have my active cell at the bottom and go Control A, the active cell doesn't move and in fact selects the data. Once again, you're not moving enough in this class. I've got a button here somewhere. How about that? Okay, now if you want to in fact get the active cell up the top, on the same handout here, if you click anywhere towards the bottom and want to in fact select the data and move the active cell, it tells you there on that same shortcut, around about, oh, where is it there? Halfway down, Control Shift Star. So Control Shift Star will in fact select the data but move your active cell to the top left-hand corner of that current region. Once again, if you've got 5 data points, the mouse is very, very fast. We've got 500,000 rows. This is much, much faster. Okay. Excuse me. So on this page here, the active cell is there in A2. This area here by the green border is in fact, once again, the current region, but the thing shown here in blue, of course, is in fact the selection. And these numbers down at the bottom, those that average, count and sum, refer to the selection. Okay. Now a single cell it won't work, but if you've got more than 2 cells, we'll in fact return the summary numbers there on screen. Okay. Let's move on quickly. On the page, it talks about a thing called a shortcut menu. It's also called a context menu. And also called a right-click menu. So I can in fact use items here on the ribbon, click on any cell in Excel, and when you go here and right-click on a cell brings up the cell shortcut menu. Either use those or the ribbon. If I click on a picture here, click on the picture, look in the name box, let's name picture number 4. If I right click on that, it brings up now a picture shortcut menu. It appears in the context of the object you are working on. Okay. So I talk sometimes in assignments and things about either shortcut menus or in fact context menus. So in some sense, when we go, for example, Control A, that's called a keyboard shortcut, but some people in fact call that just a shortcut. So sometimes a shortcut menu is confusing in terminology, so a context might be clearer. Okay. Once again, down the page here, this talks about this status bar at the bottom. So the status bar is at the bottom. If I right-click on the status bar, I can in fact go in here and customise various things. So by default, it in fact shows here the average and the count and so on. I can also go in here and choose to in fact show on the screen the minimum and the maximum of my numbers as well. Okay, change those two, put some numbers in here. Make those my selection, Control A. Down the bottom here, I've also got the average, count, min, max and sum. Okay. Nice quick way of actually checking things. Clear on that? Very good. Oh, only 1 hour left. Sheet tabs. So once again, down the bottom here there are various worksheets. So a worksheet is shown by the Sheet tab. That's pretty obvious. To insert a new worksheet, just go over here and click on that plus button. There's a brand new worksheet called, in my case, sheet number 1. I can change its name by double-clicking the name here. There are certain regulations about naming worksheets. Maximum of 31 characters. There are certain things which aren't allowed. I might just call this, might just name this FSS 2017, for example. So in the worksheet name should be meaningful to you. Okay. So back there on the previous worksheet, there are certain requirements there about naming worksheets, and it tells you here, for example, that a worksheet name, maximum of 31 characters, certain characters not allowed, spaces are okay. Now, occasionally, these annoying things are exam questions worth 2 marks. Is it worth the pain of learning this stuff? Mightn't be on the attachment sheet. Don't know, anyhow. Not very often, but there's always some annoying 2-mark question on the exam paper to try you out. Okay, so this is about the dialog box, formatting things. I won't cover this other junk on this page. Any questions? Very good, so let's just press on fairly soon. Once again, I'll stop at each of the worksheet and ask you for any questions. In this class, once again, I've got my back to half of the class, so it's hard to see you behind me. I do know you're there, so you might want to change sides next time, but I didn't design the room. At one stage, I actually worked from up here, but they've actually made these cords very short. I can't move to that spot. Okay. It's a weird configuration. Let's move on now to a thing called a finance exercise. So once again, we do know that dates and dollars are part of the time value of money. And on this page here, there's in fact information about calculating net present value. It's called ABC Farming Company is going to buy a carrot washing machine. This machine is forecast to generate income in the future of a certain amount. It's going to cost the company $80,000 to buy, and the discount rate here is in fact 5% per annum. And you might say, Ian, why do you choose a carrot washing machine? Well, I used to work in a bank's loan department once, and back in my loan department, we used to deal with farmers. And one loan I once saw was from a company wanting to borrow money for, would you believe, a carrot washing machine. Okay. Anyhow, that's the information about the cash flows. And on the page here is in fact a picture which contains the NPV formula. NPV equals typically the cash outflow at time zero and the discounted value here of future cash flows. Okay, it's called NPV. Now to point the way to next class, Excel in fact has an NPV function, which could also be used to work out the answer, and we'll do that next week. But in this class, I always harp on the fact that the NPV function in Excel does not return NPV. So any postgraduate student in finance doing Excel must always remember that Excel's NPV function does not return NPV. Why? Because VisiCalc didn't, Lotus 123 didn't, and Excel doesn't. What about OpenOffice and LibreOffice? Well, for compatibility, it also doesn't return NPV. Okay. Now, in this example here, that's the information about the cash flows. That's the formula here. And this diagram on the screen, a little bit hard to read, but it actually says here -1, -2, -3. And this has been in this workbook for around about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And last semester, for the first time, someone in this class said, Ian, it's wrong. Okay, so told that fact, what is wrong with this line just here? So table number 3. Finance, welcome to the class. What is wrong with that formula? Have a think. Yeah, the minus sign. So once again, the denominator contains a minus sign. Ah, of course it's wrong. Okay. But by pure chance, my website version of the same stuff actually contains the right answer. But anyhow, that one's been wrong for years. But only last semester, someone in fact said, Ian, it's wrong. I said, congratulations, I like you. Okay, well done. And I asked the student for approval to in fact add their name to my website, saying thank you to this person for pointing out the error. But they said, don't worry. Anyhow, and it now says, thanks to ... for finding the error. Anyhow, this one here contains the right answer. This was actually also there last semester as well. Let's have a go now doing the calculation here in table form. And of course the answer appears down the page here in this diagram. Okay. I'm going to use the table here to work out the answer. So the left-hand column is going to go from 0, 1 to 3, 4, 5. I could go in here and just type the numbers in, but I won't do that. So let's imagine there's lots of numbers to go in the page here. I put in the first number and the second one. Excel knows I'm going in a +1 increment. So make those two cells the selection, by whichever technique you prefer. Now my current mouse pointer here is an open white cross. On the selection here, on the bottom right hand corner, there's a little square dot. And when you put your mouse pointer over that little square dot, it becomes a closed black cross. And if you left click and drag, now this machine's not very useful, but it actually should, it's showing 4 or 5. If I let go here, it actually goes 0, 1 to 5. It actually does that, that sequence there automatically. So provided I tell Excel I'm actually going in a +1 increment, I can just drag it down and complete the vector. Now, if there were 50 of those, that's quite useful. If there are 500,000, don't do that, because your mouse will be going forever, okay? In the exam occasionally you might say, you know, blah, 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 the analyst is going to put 500,000 of these sequential numbers. Should you use the mouse or blah, 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 blah? And people will say, Ian, use the mouse, just drag it down, okay? It's pretty slow. Next part you can't avoid, just type in the cash flows there. So once again, the second cash flow here is, look, don't worry about the commas, 10,000, 20, 0, 0, 0, 1, 5, 0, 0, 0, 50, 0, 0, 0, and 20, 0, 0, 0, okay? That's the cash flows there. And work out the discount factors here. There are a number of ways of doing this, but to imagine this is quite a big task, I'll go to the first one here. I'm going to type in a formula. So I'm going to have 1 plus the discount rate. Either type in 0.05 or I can in fact type in 5%. And I'm going to raise it to exponential to the negative power of the period, just point and click. So 1 plus 5% caret to the power of minus E38. Of course, that formula there equals get CF. That formula there, in fact, is that one. Okay. Now, it becomes quite easy now because now I've got a single formula here. This thing here will become my guiding vector. So if we in fact have a cell which in fact has what I call a guiding vector adjacent, if I now go to the fill handle and double left click, it magically will in fact complete the copy and paste in the page. Now in the past you may have in fact gone in here, just done Control C, do that and Control V, but double click the fill handles much faster. Okay. So in the exam last semester, students were in fact asked to write some formula that goes there and then explain how would you complete it down the page. Some say you do Control C, select the target, and then paste, which works fine, but typically you just double click the fill handle and it does it very quickly. Okay. Let's have a go now at actually doing this part here. So next column is going to equal 2 times 3. I'm going to go in here and type in equals 2 space x3 in that cell there. Hit the enter key. It tells me, Ian, you're a bozo because it's found a typo. You try to in fact do multiplication, and we know in Excel that the x character is not multiplication. So to make that work, I need to in fact go in here and in fact make that appear as text. I could in fact go in here and format the cell as text in the first place. I could in fact do that, but I won't. To save time, I'm going to type in what we call a leading apostrophe. So if we type in an apostrophe, that converts what follows after that into text rather than being a formula. So now equals 2x3, in fact, will show there as a text string rather than being a formula. So once again, the apostrophe doesn't appear here in that part, but it appears up here in the formula bar. Okay. So in the right-hand column here, just to save time, I'll go in here, I'll just point and click. So I'm going to multiply my cash flow, just point and click. Now once again, star means multiplication by that cell. And in the exam, even the best students in the exam, under the stress and strain of my exams, will be asked to do something. Most of you, in fact, type in an X rather than a star. It's always worth -1, okay? Even though I always warn people every semester, make sure in the exam you type the star, not the X. Once again, that's the first one. Double click the fill handle. There's the data there. I won't change the formats. I'll go in here and add them up. I could in fact type in the sum function, but the sum function is very common. If I go up here to my auto sum function on the home tab, click on auto sum up the top here, it automatically puts in the sum function in the formula bar there and also pre-selects what it believes to be the data. It automatically does it for me. That's in fact correct. Hit the enter key. There's the answer there, which of course is the same as that number up the top there. That's pretty straightforward. We'll do this same exercise several times during semester. Why might you use a table? Well, it in fact does show the customer, this concept of discounting and raw dollars here and discounted numbers here to work out the NPV. Okay, that's enough on that one. Down the page here. Any questions? Look, I won't cover this part of the second. Down the page where it talks here about the fill handle. Now the first two here contains number 1 and the A. Now the one is there in isolation. So if you drag the fill handle to the right, Excel won't know how much to increase it by. If you have just a raw number in a cell, now the fill handle going down the page should become larger. So down or to the right should increase. Upwards or to the left should decrease. In this case, I'll drag to the right. It doesn't in fact make it change at all. On the alphabet, it does the same thing. It doesn't in fact make any difference. It doesn't go A, B, C. It just goes on that sequence. Down the page there is in fact a date. It's a bit different. So a date is also a number in Excel. But look at this, what happens now. If I drag the date to the right, it in fact goes across the page there and goes 1 day increments automatically. If it goes to the left, for example, it will go backwards in time 1 day at a time. A bit hard to read there. Basically that column there, it's too narrow. There's my date there in the previous year. This one here is in fact 6 a.m. If I go to the right, it goes in 1 hour increments automatically. Now I won't go through them all because they're a bit fiddly here. This in fact is a mixture of a text string and a number. Now product 1 will in fact automatically do product 1, 2, 3, 4. And down the page here, these in fact all work. So once again, A1 will in fact go across the page there and increment those sequences. And it becomes quite clear down the page. Let's look now at the one called the first quarter. That's in fact the first quarter of the year. So it should go first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, but will in fact have fifth quarter or not. Let's try the quarterly one, and magically it goes back to the first quarter automatically. They're all built into Excel, and all those ones there will in fact work for you automatically. Let's look at days of the week. Go to the right here, done automatically. Same there for the full date, also here for example months, and also there for the month as the full month. Now if you want to in fact do months, for example, every quarter, so January is in fact the first month, April is in fact the fourth, so the step size there is in fact a step size of 3. So if I select here January and April, the next one there of course should in fact be July. It goes there in the step size, and so on. Okay, and you can fiddle around in the page there with the other examples at your leisure. It's on my website how they are done. Okay. Now in this subject, they're not that important in the subject, but they might be useful to you downtown in trying to do things in a daily operation. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so my microphone might have charged by now. I'll put it back on for a short time, see what happens here. So given this evening class, typically many of you might be working down, somewhere during the day, so you might find this stuff fairly routine, but let's just press on with next one here called entering and editing data, which I'm assuming you already know these skills anyhow. But on the screen it in fact talks about 3 different layers in Excel. And on the screen here, there's a cell which contains a little red dot. It's there in cell C9. That in fact contains a comment. Now for some weird reason, this worksheet doesn't work very well. When you click on the cell, the comment should appear automatically, but it doesn't. Don't know why. It's something with the file, I think. If I go in here and in fact click on this cell, and in fact go in here on the shortcut and click on here somewhere to in fact show the comment, there's the comment there on screen. It's actually a picture of the drawing layer, the top layer, and the equation. Now these terms aren't used much on websites, it's the thing I talk about. So basically here, I'll just get rid of that picture on screen, just in fact hide the thing now. Okay. What do we mean by the drawing layer? I can go in here and insert, for example, a shape like the smiling face. That shape there appears on the drawing layer. That means I can in fact move it around and it's not tied to any one cell. Because it's been selected here, if that's in fact my current selection, its name appears up here in the name box. It's called Smiley Face 212 in my case anyhow. Okay, so the top layer is what appears in the cell. So over here, type in a formula, equals 1 plus 2. So when I press the Enter key, the top layer shows you the 3, but of course the formula appears up here in the formula bar. It contains that. Okay. When you put numbers into a spreadsheet, in Excel, a number is what they call a double precision floating point number. Okay. And you mightn't know what that means, but basically in Excel, that's how they work. It's to do with sort of a technical reason in computing. But in Excel, a number can't exceed 15 digits. Okay? It can't exceed 15 digits. So if I went in here, for example, and tried to type in a credit card, now a credit card in fact has 16 digits. Now like 1, 2, 3, 4, that's the first 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 8 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 16. Up there in the formula bar, there's my sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times. Press the Enter key, what happens? Well, the cell goes in scientific notation. Look in the formula bar. The last number there has been dropped out. So Excel only contains 15 digits. Okay, that's the first important point there that we are doing. Okay. What's a number? A number is between 0 to 9 and the decimal separator. Okay. Now let's just quickly move down the page here. I'm going to look now at information in a cell. The information is either a number, a formula, or a text. So information in a cell is either a number, a formula, or a text. Down the page here, there's information about some numbers, and on the screen here, if you click on the cell beside the formula bar, things should work well. Okay, so around about 5 years ago, in this subject, it used to be taught in a computer lab. We actually provided for each student a computer. Fantastic. I was at the front, all these computers out there, you know. And in the laboratory, I didn't have one of these microphones. They wouldn't provide the stupid thing. I had this handheld microphone. And it's really, really hard to type with one hand and use the mouse, okay? So, they wouldn't provide the microphone. And one day, things went so bad, I said, yeah, I started to cry to this person. And she promised to come next week and hold the microphone for me. But she never showed up, anyhow. Lo and behold, they closed the lab and you've got your own machines these days. Anyhow, in desperation there, I've got this microphone, click on the cell Ian, click on that icon, and it puts 10 up there in the formula bar. I'm still here in edit mode. Hit the Enter key, and it completes the entry there on screen. So that's a number there like 10, and you can see there that the cell shows 10 on the top layer. The formula bar also shows 10 for the number. Now, to save time tonight, that's a whole number. Some contain decimal places here, 23.56 and so on. What about the next one? 2.71828. Now, I wrote this on the whiteboard in the class today, but once again, half the class can't see both whiteboards. I'll go over here and write down some numbers, because we know there that that number is in fact the base of natural logarithms. And you should remember it to 15 digits. Do you remember that? 15 digits? So it starts with 2.7. And how do you remember the number 2.7? Why is 2.7 important? Well, in the US of A, 2.7% of the population have what they call a healthy lifestyle. The rest are cactus. So in the USA, the reports say 2.7% of Americans partake in a healthy lifestyle. That's what it is, okay? Now, next two numbers are, in fact, 1828, 1828. How do you remember those two? I used to work in a bank once, and in Australia, 1828 was the year of Australia's first bank robbery. When was that? 1828. So in Australia, in Sydney, the first bank robbery occurred in 1828. Okay. Now, in Australia these days, there's lots of new arrivals, but I don't know if I'm proud to say, I can actually say that me as a person, my family arrived here in 1842, would you believe? So I've actually been around for a fair while. I guess I'm pretty unique these days in our current climate. Anyhow, 1828, 1828. What do you know, table 7, about triangles? Name a certain type of triangle. Right angle triangle. Thank you very much. Okay, that's a good answer. What other sort of triangles are there? I did know secondary school a long time ago. But that's okay. Wrangler. Okay. Table number 9. What about an isosceles triangle? So we know the numbers in fact add up to 180 degrees. An isosceles triangle has two sides of equal length. If the two sides are of equal length, okay, in this case we've actually got the angles of 45 degrees, 90 degrees and 45 degrees, because it's one of those type things. Okay. So Euler's number 2.7, 1828, 1828, 45, 90, 45 is the number with 15 digits, the maximum number allowable in Excel. Bit of barbecue stuff next weekend, okay? So those are in phones. You'll cover that in other subjects, but you just sort of be able to remember that number. So that's what we're talking about there. Okay, now down the page here, when you put in 8%, you either type in 0.1 or type in 10%. Bit funny here because when you type in 10%, look in the formula bar, it also shows up here the number 10%. But behind the scenes, it's actually stored there, in fact, as 0.1. Now the other ones here, put in a fraction like 1 and 7/8. Look in the formula bar, it's stored there as a decimal. Now these days, fractions aren't that useful, but a little while back, the US, in fact, used to quote stock prices in fractions. It's been phased out these days, but you know, it might be useful sometimes. They're all just examples of numbers. Quickly moving on, it's already 8:41. Okay, so let's look now at dates. So basically here in Excel, it started at 1900. So today is in fact that date, 27th of July. It's around about 8:41 p.m. So it's in fact day number 42,943 in Excel, which of course we know is in fact 42,942 days in reality since 1/1900. Okay, so basically here, click on a cell, hit the formula bar. Now what I've typed in there, so 1 Jan 16 is not a number because it contains JAN. But Excel is very, very clever. If you type in something like a date, it automatically returns the date. Okay, it stores a number there behind the scenes as 42,370. So the cell here contains what I typed in, but the formula bar in fact contains the date there in my local's Windows default setting. Okay, so I won't go through any more of those, but basically in the sub we assume we've got sort of days, months and years. Once again, times here. Now a time contains a semicolon, so 9 like that will in fact be 9 a.m. Look in the formula bar, what do you see? In the formula bar it contains the actual time with the AM at the end, based upon your Windows settings. Okay. Quickly moving on down the page here. Now on the screen here, if I go over here and type in my name, so IA in lowercase ends up being there as text. But in Excel, if I go over here and type in Excel the word true in lowercase, would normally be a text string, but in Excel, that in fact comes back here with uppercase centre justified. So we know that in Excel, it's very important for decision making. We do some test, is the answer true or false? So in Excel, by default, true and false automatically end up as being what they call Boolean. Boolean in fact means, yes or no in this calculation here. And the same thing here appears for false. Now in Excel, a false is a 0 and a true is a 1. So true is a 1 and false is 0. Let's just try it out. Let's just go down here. I'm going to go in here and I'll type in true in that cell. Okay. I'll go over here with a formula. I'm going to go over here and click on the true and multiply it by 1. So my true string multiplied by 1, in fact, will return there the number 1. Whoops, I keep on talking about minus sign. Equals get CF. That one, in fact, returns 1. Okay. Look, another way of doing the same thing here is you can actually go in here and type in a formula equals minus minus true. That does the same thing. It's actually called a unary operator. So I'm actually multiplying a -1 by a minus value. So the two minus signs in fact return a positive. And in the homework this week, you'll find you might need that. You also might know the answer, but have a go at it before the answer appears and then look at the answer and try and figure out how it was arrived at, okay? So hit the enter sign there. It also returns there the number 1. And once again, that process there is called unary. In the sense I'm just working on one number or one value. Double minus, in fact, returns that number, okay? And that's how we've done in the more advanced work in Excel. Okay, so a formula in Excel always starts with equal signs. Once again, I'll just do one of them here. That's in fact a formula. Won't show much more than that. And in Excel, anything that is not a number is in fact text, okay? So I'll go in here, for example. Now, one example is, let's suppose I want to put in a mobile phone number. Now, my mobile phone number starts with 0419. So if I go in here and type in 0419, by default, that in fact will just return the number 419, because the leading 0 is redundant in our numbering system, okay? If I want to go in here, in fact, retain the leading 04, I must in fact convert that cell into text. So like before, type in an apostrophe to say whatever's following after that will in fact be a text string, 0419, and now you see there's in fact the number which shows the number on screen, but it doesn't in fact contain the apostrophe visible. Okay, does that make sense there? Okay. Now this first class, it always goes too slowly, so I'm going to move on slightly faster now. It's already 1:45, I want to go home soon. We need to cover that. And on the screen here, once again, this talks about operators in Excel, mathematical operators, plus sign, minus sign. Once again, in Excel, the star multiplication, not the X, division to the power, and also in Excel, the percent key converts like 10% into 0.1. That doesn't work in VBA. It does work in Excel. On the right-hand side here, it also talks now about a comparison operator. All these things here return true or false. We'll just do 2 of them. So it's always done as part of a formula. So I'm going to start to type a formula with the equal sign. I'm going to check to see, does 1 equal 1? Easy, you'll say. Of course it does, okay? So equals 1. So the first part there is a formula. But this time, the second equal sign is in fact my comparison operator. I'm actually going to compare that number to the next one. So formula equals 1 compared to 1. I know it's true, therefore pressing the enter key will in fact return there true. Okay. Let's do one more. Okay. So on this line here, I'm here on my less than 1. So equals is 4 less than 3. So the second operator here is the comparison. I know already that, of course, that's going to return false. Hitting the enter key there, of course, returns that expression. So a comparison is really done as part of a formula, and hope that makes some sense there. Okay, so it's already 8:49. Let's just look briefly here at this notion of a concatenation. Now, I'll do it slightly differently this time. We know that if I type in apples and oranges, so if you actually listened to the tape this morning, or the earlier class today, I actually did my name, but we know that you can't add apples and oranges, you can't add them. So I can't use the plus sign, but I can in fact join those strings together. Okay. So down the page here, I'm going to in fact write a formula to in fact combine that cell containing apples and join to that with my ampersand, which is called the concatenation operator. It really means join together some text strings. So if I go in here and click on the second one, so apples concatenate oranges, hit the enter key, there's the answer. Okay. Now on the right hand side here, equals get CF. It contains that. And some people might say, I want a space between apples and oranges. Okay. How would you do that? There are a number of ways of solving the problem. Now the bad way is to go in here into apples and go in here and put in a space after the S. Now I could do that, solves the problem, but that's a bit of a no-no because it's very, very hard to see that trailing space. So although it works okay, you shouldn't do that professionally. Okay? So I'll go in here and in fact undo that. Well then you might say, I can put a space here at the start of oranges, which becomes a bit more obvious, but it's also bad practice. So let's go back now to this one here. In the formula bar, I'll go in here, and after my first ampersand, I'm going to in fact put in a hard-coded space in the formula. So to put text inside a formula, the text is contained inside double quotes. So after the first ampersand, I type in double quote, space, double quote. Then I concatenate that to my last character with another ampersand symbol. So now I've in fact got that with that hard-coded space there appearing between those two characters. So downtown you might be in fact joining, in a database, the person's username to your domain name for emails, for example. Okay. When I was in charge of the honours program here a little while back, had a spreadsheet with the student's username, and just concatenate, at student Unimelb to do the email system out of a spreadsheet. Okay. Now down the page here, there's some examples which I won't talk about. I'll let you ponder those during the week. Okay. Any questions? So once again, in all these classes, there's a lot to cover. I'm sure I'd probably try and cover too much, but make sure you read through it all. But the more basic stuff is what you're required to know for the assignment work and also for the exam. The other stuff is just useful to know in downtown situations, I guess. I don't know. Anyhow. So once again, this page here contains some session notes. When I click on that, it appears on screen. It's similar to what's already written here. Also a bit different. It contains some information here on screen and so on. So it talks here about cells and ranges. So what do we mean by a cell? A cell is something which contains, It's a single element, okay? So a cell is a single element of a worksheet. So on the screen here, we know that Excel contains around about 17 billion cells per worksheet. But a range is a group of cells of more than one. So for example here, that selection is in fact 4 cells. And its address is given by the address of the top cell. In that case there, that's in fact there in N6. This one here is in fact in N9. So a range is given by top left cell, bottom right hand cell in that fashion. Okay. So on the screen here, it talks about cell B2. So to get to cell B2, let's suppose I'm down here at the bottom of the page. I'm down here in cell XFD 148, whatever. If I went through row by row, I've just transversed 17 billion cells on the spreadsheet. How do I get back to B2? So I could use the mouse, I could use the control home sequence, or I can go to the name box, and up here in the name box, just type in B2, the address of the cell you're going to, press the enter key, and you are magically there in cell B2. So that's a quick way of actually getting to that location. So B2 is a single cell in row 2 of column B. This one here is in fact 2 cells, so A1, A2. In this case here, that colon represents, of course, here, it represents the range operator from this page. Very good. Now on the screen here, this BB thing, what does that mean? If I go to the name box and type in, for example, column B, now B by itself won't do anything, range operator B, that will select all of the cells in column B, okay? Let's suppose I want to select all of the cells from A across to I. A range operator I will in fact select those cells. It's a fast way of doing things, okay? Let's say we're going out doing rows. So once again, a number by itself won't do anything, but using the range operator in the centre, so I can go in here and type in, for example, 2 colon 2, it selects all of the rows there, all of the columns in row 2. Have a go at doing rows 1 to 10. So in the name box, select rows 1 to 10 in the name box, okay? So in the name box, just type in 1 range operator 10, and there's those 10 rows selected. This one here is all of the cells in the worksheet, the whole 17 billion. You could type it in, or up here, in the little area here between the columns and the rows, that little box there, if you click on that, that in fact selects the whole 17 billion cells. Whatever you do, don't type in a number, enter, control enter, because you try to populate 17 billion numbers there and I just say, no memory left, okay? Rightio, selecting cells, it's pretty straightforward. Look, the final part tonight, we're almost out of time, but there is one important thing. Now, once again, in Excel, it's really hard to remember the coordinates of a range. Like going from, Z15 down to Z45 is pretty hard to remember, okay? The same way as your address, okay? If your address was based on coordinates of being so many degrees east and south, pretty hard to remember those coordinates on a map system. That's why, for example, it's much easier in fact have, apartment 55 or, 100 Swanson Street or something, which is your address. So let's in fact try and apply a range name to an address. They're called range names here, but in Excel they're also called a defined name. Now I still call them a range name. Why? Because in Lotus 123 they were called range names, and I use that stuff for years and I can't really break away from calling it range names. But in Excel VBA they're also referred to as a range name there. But anyhow, in Excel it's actually called a defined name. There are certain requirements here. it can't exceed 255 characters. Now just to point the way here, these things here are sometimes exam questions. The first one's not that important, 255, but it must start with a letter, underscore or backslash. Okay. Now the first two there are important. The backslash one, never seen the thing, but it's allowable, but you can in fact start with a backslash, but so it must start with a letter or an underscore. It cannot contain spaces or special characters. It cannot contain a dot. And it can't be a valid cell address. For example, in Excel, TAX 2017 is in fact in column TAX and in the row 2017. So that cannot be a defined name because it's in fact a valid cell address. Okay? And a thing like that is often an exam question on multiple choice. You know, which of the list down the bottom here are not a valid cell name? Okay. So let's have a go now trying to name items. It can be done a number of ways here. Now on the screen here, this is in fact some sales data for Victoria for those 6 months. Now this one here goes from F85 down to F90. That's hard to remember. Let's first of all name that vector there with method number 1. So first of all, just select the numbers you are going to name. That's my selection. Now go to the name box. And once again, capitalisation doesn't matter. Go to the name box, just type in sales V. But using the capitalisation makes it more readable. Hit the enter key. And you'll see now, if you go to the name box, there it is, sales V. Go to any spreadsheet, go to sales V, and it goes to the precise range automatically. Okay? Let's have a go now trying to name this one here with method number 2. Okay? So let's just go in now and select that vector. Now once again, the name box is a pretty fast way of doing it. Let's go now to the formulas tab. And on the formulas tab, let's find the defined names group. There it is on screen, defined names. Let's now find the defined name button. Brings up a box here. Now Excel's pretty clever. There's the address of the range down the bottom here. And it's already figured out you might in fact use that label to in fact name the range. So if that's okay, just go in here now and click on the OK button. Once again, it now appears up here in the name box. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Now, often you might want to apply a lot of names to various data points. Now, down the page here now, there's an example of items relating to the Black-Scholes option pricing models. In this example here, I want to in fact have the 12 with the name of stock, the 13 in fact have the name of exercise, and so on. By using these labels here in the left-hand side. Now thinking about these regulations here, it says here that the name cannot contain a space or special characters. Special characters appear on the top row of the numbers bar. So for example, a $sign, %key, caret, ampersand can't be used in names. But it also can't contain a space. This name here contains risk space free. So it's not in fact potentially a valid name. But Excel is very clever. So go in here and select the labels and the values. So labels on the left-hand side. The values appear there on the right-hand column. So make that your selection. Go to the Formulas tab and click now on the one called Create from Selection. So I've already done my selection. You click on Create from Selection. Now it already says I'm going to create names from the values in the left column. Now as far as I'm concerned, that wording is wrong because the left column contains labels and the values of the numbers which appear there in the right column. But once again, this is coming from Lotus 123. It's always been wrong, so it actually means the labels there in the left column. And when you clicked on the OK button, you'll see now in the Formula tab, there's in fact, once again, your exercise price and so on. And notice here that risk-free now contains an underscore. So when you use that facility, Excel automatically replaces every illegal character with an underscore. Very good. So it ends up being risk underscore free. Now in the first assignment, it mightn't be there this semester, but in the past, in the assignment number 1, I've had some labels called log space / space change. It's the log price or the change in price for the return vector. So it's got something space / space. And space / space are in fact illegal. Therefore, when you in fact add the name, you actually have a triple underscore in sequence. And the assignment always says, if it's there, look at the names very carefully and understand why these sequences appear in that logic. And every semester, at least one group will go in and say, oh, I don't like that, I will delete 2 underscores, because they don't like a triple underscore sequence. They just can't stand it, okay? But it's actually created automatically because of the feature it's coming from the label on the left-hand side. So basically now we'll finish up the class at this point. Basically now we've actually got some names. So let's go to the Formulas tab, the Name Manager. And on the screen now, in fact, see in the Name Manager here, there's a list of all of the worksheet names in the current workbook. So the names there appear on the left-hand side. They're called defined names in Excel. Current values there, what they refer to, and also over here is in fact the scope. And you can go in here and filter things. Also go in here and sort things on values, sort on names, either order. And if you ever want to change anything, click on the name, like Sales V, go in here, click on the Edit button. You can in fact modify either the name or what it refers to. Also, of course, you want to go in here and delete a name. To delete a name, select the name, click on the Delete button, and then just click on OK or Cancel on that screen. Very good. It's already 9:05, so I'm sorry I've gone so slowly. Once again, tonight's class is fairly introductory. We go pretty fast in this subject, so once again, please just don't sit back and say that was easy, because some of you will get a little bit lost. Some of you, not that many, but some of you will get in fact lost about what's going on. So just to point the way here once again, make sure that you are aware of stuff available here for you to do. So once again, back here on this sessions page, in class number 1, you'll see here, for example, in the exercises number 2 here, there's in fact an exercise involving, once again, stock volume data for 1 year. And you are asked to go in here using just cell references and operators, add them up, count them, and do certain things there. That doesn't mean go the first cell plus the second cell plus the third cell plus the fourth cell, because imagine there's 1 million, you've only got 8,000 characters to work on. Think about how you would do it from what we've worked on today. Okay. The answer appears on Saturday morning at 12 a.m. Ignore it. Make sure you try it before you in fact look at the answer. Please try them before you check the answer. Okay, that is the best way to learn. Okay, I hope you've survived the class tonight. In the class this afternoon with 76 out of 80, 2 withdrew after half an hour. It's their prerogative. I hope most of you in the class tonight come back next week. Okay. If you don't, whatever you choose to do, I hope you enjoy it and you are successful. Otherwise, I'm here to help you in financial spreadsheeting. So I look forward to your return next week. Okay. Hope you've learned something. Any questions? Ah, very good. Now, what's Euler's number?
Pardon?
What's that number? Ah.
1828, 1828.
So Australia's first bank robbery, isosceles triangle, and 2.7, the number of healthy Americans. That's a bit of a worry. Now, I wonder what the number is in Australia. It wouldn't be much better, I don't think, given our obesity and...
Maybe around 5.
Oh, okay, rightio. We shouldn't knock Good old US of A. Okay, so see you next week, hopefully. And once again, in the final examination, things went pretty well last semester. You know, there were some pretty intelligent people around.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, that's good. Quick questions are good, but the answers aren't always that simple, though. But anyhow, go ahead, John.
Formula, for example, formula text, right?
Your formula text.
Yeah, it gives me this list of potential formulas. I want to pick this one. How to make it after fill? It doesn't.
Hit the tab key. Tab. Okay.
Thanks.
So the tab,
That's it.
well, actually, I didn't cover it tonight, but the tab key, if you can find it on the list, tab, it completes the typing and does the opening bracket. And if you're in fact in Mac, it in fact also adds the closing bracket that Windows
Because
doesn't.
I had different Excel and I actually did it by left click, but in this one it
Okay,
doesn't work.
but on Mac it also adds the closing bracket, but Windows doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So one question.
Yep.
How do I change this formatting pattern as in accounting? I mean, mine is hardwired with the Indian one. Where it's pairing 2 after the 3. So how do I change it to the 3, 3, 3?
No, you have to go into Windows.
Okay.
But so if you sent that file to me, it should in fact show on my local settings. It shouldn't convey that across. So once again, in the stuff tonight. So once again, on this first page here, so introductory stuff, 0.2.1, set Windows region.
Okay.
So that's what I'm talking about. And because it's a little bit fiddly, you go in here somewhere. If you go in here, you actually bring up with these menus, so the start button, settings, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
So all these red numbers here are in fact on the keyboard. They'll go in here and then select English Australia rather than English India.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Professor. Yep.
Yes, sir.
Hey, just from your previous knowledge, do you reckon any of the stuff we do in VBA might affect Excel just with work computers? You know,
So Lord,
so anything we do in VBA might affect security systems in working computers? Because I'm using my work laptop for Excel.
no, it shouldn't. So anything I provide should be saved. But once
Yeah.
again, in this world of
Yeah.
terrible people,
Yeah.
well, for example, at the university, I'm not sure it's probably knowledge not, but here last year,
Yeah.
someone opened an email which encrypted all our network drives in the faculty.
Oh, okay.
3 days they were up the creek. They got caught.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Easy. I don't think so. I wouldn't think so. It's just because we use macros.
Okay, so as a general recommendation, okay, if you're using a work computer, are you permitted to legally, in fact, use it in this environment?
I'm allowed to use it, yeah.
Okay. If you're allowed to do that, you're right. But I know my daughter's one, she's got a special thing she plugs in, and she can only ever use her PC for either on a secure network or on one which has got this gadget, this Google, which in fact encrypts everything for the bench works.
Yeah, we have
But
that.
she can't use it privately at all. She carries around 2 or 3 of them. She's got a work phone and her own phone, and they can't be mixed with.
We've got the encrypted network as well. It doesn't.
Okay, but so once again, provided you're within your institution's permission to use it here,
Yeah.
just use common sense.
Yeah. Easy.
Thanks for letting me borrow this.
Oh, that's okay. Right up back, it's even better.
Hi, Prof.
Yeah, I'm just Ian.
Yeah.
Ian will do.
Okay. So the thing is, I'm very new to the subject.
Yep. Well, most people are. 'Cause-
Yeah, and I've never done Excel. I
Okay.
was a compliance officer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I've just worked, like, done the basic, very, very basic
Yeah,
stuff.
okay.
Excel.
Yep.
So,
It's a SWOT concern.
yeah.
So,
But I'm keen on the subject.
Okay,
So do you
and-
think I
and-
should be continuing?
what degree are you doing?
Master of Management Finance?
Oh, you should.
Definitely.
Well, I recommend it. In fact, it used to be compulsory at one stage.
Okay.
It was compulsory.
Okay.
But the trouble was we had too many students.
Okay. Okay.
And the head of the department at the time didn't like paying me more to teach more students, so he said, let's get rid of the students.
The thing is,
And then he made it optional, and there was more students than ever. So he left anyhow, and
yeah.
they just, was.
So the thing is, that's what I couldn't. I will put in the hard work, but I just need anything.
Well, it doesn't really require hard work, but in the stuff tonight, when you look through those dot points on my module
Yeah.
thing, what can you really talk about in relation to